across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, and of course this is the home of common sense, the only place to be if you want to find out what's going on in the world and if you want to have a completely and utterly unvarnished view of the news, because don't worry about all the others. You know, the Sky Newses of this world, the BBC, ITV, you know, Bloomberg, anybody else, no. Just stay no, because at the end of the day, there is only one place to get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and it is right here on Morning Glory on talkTV. Emma Wolf is here with us this morning. Very good morning to you, Emma. We're going to be looking through the papers this morning, and I'm afraid, once again, as much as I wouldn't want to do it every single day, I'm afraid Sir Keir Starmer is going to be getting another shellacking. Yesterday, we revealed how he had hired a voice coach, no less, in 2020 during COVID rules, when Tier 4 rules were in place, which meant that nobody could travel anywhere, nobody was supposed to see anybody. It turns out not only did he hire the voice coach to come and see him personally in Labour headquarters, but that basically she travelled 50 miles for the privilege of doing so. Questions are now being asked. She was very tetchy yesterday. He went over to Brussels and he had this really, really boring press conference about NATO, in which he stood there and talked about how it's very important that we have the European protections and we must stand together and all of that rubbish, right? Meanwhile, you know, back here in the UK, a 15-year-old boy has been killed at a school, having been stabbed by another 15-year-old, which is absolutely utterly unbelievable. We've got council tax rising, which, of course, he said he wouldn't do, more than something like 10% on average across the nation. Also, we've got Rayner, who wants to get a definition of Islamophobia. Well, I've got a challenge for all of you out there this morning. How about we get a definition of Anglophobia? You know, because the people in this government seem to hate Britain, they seem to hate people who are British, and they seem to hate everything about our culture, our history, and what it is that we hold dear. What is wrong with them? So let me ask you to give us a definition of Anglophobia. Maybe we get that written into the law as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Also, we'll be talking about GB Energy, the greatest scam that was ever purported on the British public. We'll be talking about the crackdown on fat jabs at chemists. And also, apparently 1 in 3 people are stealing from the self-checkout. That means it's not just shoplifters, it's pretty much everybody. I find that extraordinary. It's 5 minutes past 6. This is Morning Glory. If you've forgotten how to get in touch with us, have a listen to this.
Morning, Mike. Tony from Buckinghamshire. I'm just sitting here thinking the audacity of this Keir Starmer.
Good morning, Michael. It's Jippy here from Rainbow House. Please stop comparing me to that idiot two-tier Kia.
Morning, Mike. It's James from Blackburn. A voice coach. Can you imagine what he spoke like before? He's brilliant, isn't he?
I mean, it is brilliant. We spent a lot of time yesterday getting loads and loads of you to do impersonations of Keir Starmer. I'm not going to ask them today, but if you wish to do them, that's OK. It's not a problem. You will not be prevented from coming on to do it. As I said, Emma Wolf is here. I'm here. We've got the papers as well. We'll tell you all about what's going on. This is Morning Glory. Let us get it on. Emma, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, we had a lot of fun yesterday talking about Keir Starmer, but it's a very serious subject, isn't it? Because an awful lot of people also on the serious side of it got in touch with us to say, well, hang on a minute, you know, children who need speech therapy weren't allowed to have their speech therapist come and visit them. You know, people who had loved ones who were in nursing homes couldn't go and see them. I mean, I remember that Christmas, I think, of 2020, I was due to go and see my mother in America. I couldn't go, you know, because of government regulations. So, you know, it's not simply that he completely and utterly disregarded it. But he was very grumpy yesterday when he was asked about it, wasn't he?
He gets
Typical
very tetchy.
Starmer.
He gets very tetchy when he's actually challenged on things. And, you know, we can criticise Boris and all of that lot as much as we like. But actually, at least they face up to questions and they, you know, they realise when they're in trouble, when they've been backed into a corner and they need to answer some serious questions. Keir Starmer doesn't like being challenged. I mean, there is the funny side of this, which is, as many of your callers have been saying, and yesterday's programme was absolutely hilarious on this, you know, blimey, if he's had a voice coach now, how bad was it before? And actually, many people say he was better before. So
it turns out one of the reasons he got this voice coach was because he suffers from stage fright. Apparently, well, he's pretty frightening to an awful lot of people.
I don't even know what to say.
and
he doesn't seem comfortable in a room. So there is the funny side, and Quentin Lett is hilarious. In the Daily Mail today, he says he calls him the nasal knight, and he said it would be easier to teach a warthog to whistle. He's saying, you know, these are the jobs from hell. Being Keir Starmer's vocal coach, jobs from hell, like being a sort of a cleaner in a cement factory.
Absolutely brilliant.
But I think also, no, you're absolutely right. There are serious questions here, and I hope this one is not going to be dropped.
No.
I hope we're not going to let him ride this out, because actually, as you say, you weren't able to see your your mum was really old, wasn't she? I mean, we were all subject. But what about children that weren't even allowed to have an education? I mean, we locked down the country. It's so... I mean, you know, you don't want to start.
Well, there'll be loads of families, because I remember it quite well. You know, we have to sort of always think back to what we were thinking at the time.
What it was like.
But it was the first Christmas under, you know, the COVID restrictions, and I seem to remember that there were an awful lot of families who said to me, we were going to normally have the big family Christmas. You know, we've got family in Shropshire, we've got family in you know, Lancashire. We're all going to come together in I don't know, Northamptonshire and have a meal. We couldn't do that, so they didn't do it, and so many people were not only disadvantaged and discombobulated, but, you know, missed the opportunity to see some people who then died before they saw them again.
Exactly. Even if it wasn't as extreme as someone dying in hospital and you couldn't get there. Exactly. People missed out on those opportunities. I remember driving over to my big sister's and having this plan. I had a newborn baby. I was all on my own. Had this plan that if the police stopped me, I was going to say I was in a bubble with this one and that one. It's absolutely ridiculous, just the way, in a broader sense, the way that our lives were shut down and locked down. And then we find out that he was having vocal training to deliver some speech, how he was going to...
And also, I mean, a lot of people are saying to me now, and we didn't really touch upon this yesterday, but we can do it today, Christmas Eve, do you really believe that this woman was only coming to see him for a vocal lesson, a vocal coach lesson, or was she coming for some other purpose? I'm not suggesting anything untoward, but I'm saying that maybe she was invited because she'd had previous Zoom meetings with him, but on this occasion she travelled all the way from Brighton and went all the way back again. Maybe he invited her for a drink, which is very much against the rules.
What on earth was she doing? Why was this not possible? As many people have pointed out, this could have absolutely been done over Zoom.
Sure.
It's one of those things that can. It's not like a massage, I hope.
Well,
I mean...
maybe she came for one of those,
but
I don't know.
Vocal training can absolutely... And I spoke to an actress friend of mine yesterday who said, we do this all the time. 90% of her work is now over Zoom. So this could have absolutely been done over Zoom. Secondly, what on earth was she doing coming into Tier 4? London was under Tier 4 on Christmas Eve. You're absolutely right. That's just... something is not
There's
right
something not
about
quite
this
right
story.
about it. But let's have a look at how he was yesterday. Starmer, of course, went over to Brussels yesterday. He gave, possibly even for him, one of those boring press conferences of all time with the head of NATO, talking about how NATO is to protect us all, we must sign... I literally could... I watched it for about 10 seconds. It was like, click. But at the end, Jack Elson from The Sun asked him about this COVID business. Have a look.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key worker?
So, of course not, very tetchily, when he was asked if he broke any COVID rules. And was the voice coach absolutely within the rules? We didn't break any of the rules. Because he's obsessed with rules, isn't he? So he will somehow find a rule that says that whatever he did was right.
As he did with Beergate.
And as ever, people will say, yeah, well, it's not just about the rules, it's about the look, and it's about the optics, it's about, you know, what you were telling everybody else to do.
Well, I really wonder, how would he find a way around these rules?
Well, because he's very good at, like he did with the Southport killer, right?
How can
Do you
you
remember when he came out and he gave a press conference and he said the reason that we did not say that this was a terrorist attack was because it didn't fit the definition of terrorism, and he sort of invented this definition of terrorism, which nobody really believed, and everybody went, well, all right, so you're going to actually construct an argument around an invention which will then let you off the hook. That's what he does, because he's a lawyer.
Well, yes, but it's also deeply dishonest.
It is.
And I really wonder how he's going to... well, I mean, look, I think the key worker definition was abused, widely abused.
Well, there's no way she's a key worker.
There's no way she's a key worker.
No.
This is about delivery. Your vocal training is a sort of icing on the cake. That's nothing to do with essential. No. It's like going out and buying chocolate truffles. You know, we were told we were only allowed to buy essential purchases.
Right, so chocolate truffles don't count.
So
and you can't walk with a friend of yours to have a cup of coffee in the forest.
Oh, you couldn't sit on a bench?
No, you couldn't sit on... Their benches were covered over.
Benches were covered with tape. I mean, this is just...
I mean, I realise, and a lot of people say to me, and Julie Hartley-Brewer was one yesterday, she said, I don't care about this story, I don't think it matters. I think it does matter.
I think it really
and there are
does
reasons
matter.
why it matters, and it's because of what everybody else was forced to do by various, law enforcement authorities and various, councils and all of the sort of, jobs worths who were very happy to make your life a bleeding misery on the basis that you might get COVID.
It also matters because how much hounding was the Prime Minister at the time given over the bloomin' birthday cake scenario, where he may or may not have popped his head around the office when they were having the birthday cake.
Well, they all came into his office. Let's have a look at what Starmer said back in 2022 after Beergate, right?
I'm absolutely clear that no laws were broken. They were followed at all times. I simply had something to eat while working late in the evening, as any politician would do days before an election. But if the police decide to issue me with a fixed penalty notice, I would, of course, do the right thing and step down.
Oh, well, let's hope he doesn't get sent a fixed penalty notice, because he'd have to step down, because that's what he said he would do.
And that's the other thing. I think that lots of us, Mike, can see this as a possible chink in the way of getting rid of this dreadful, dreadful man that we are facing the next 4 years with.
I've been saying something will come. Don't know when it will be, don't know what it will be, I don't know why it will come, but something will come that will mean that he has to leave.
Well, I
didn't expect it to be a voice coach.
I didn't expect it to be this, or back in, or back.
But maybe that's what it will be.
That's what I mean. People are seeing this, but also people are angry. This is not just. It's not just a sort of regular little scandal, is it?
No.
Because it touched so many people's lives. I think people are really angry, and I just hope.
Also, he's so bloody sanctimonious about everything. You know.
That's we've got so much footage.
Down if I ever found to have breached the law, you know.
And they wriggled out of Beergate just about, but this one, I just hope that he doesn't, that people don't let this drop. Because
well, he can't say the voice coach was something to eat, as most politicians would do, can he?
No.
The voice coach is clearly not something to eat, I don't think.
If they were doing something else, if they were doing something essential, then tell us.
Yeah.
You know, what was it? What was going on? Why did she need to travel down on Christmas Eve? Oh, because I was working on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. Like any politician, I ordered a voice coach for Christmas. What?
It really, really stinks.
Did she come wrapped in, you know, Christmas wrapping? Did he unwrap her and go, voice coach for Christmas?
I don't know.
I mean, just ridiculous. The next one, all right, council tax. We had this conversation last week because it looks as though some places like Windsor are going to go up by 25%. Once again, a pledge from Keir Starmer before the election not to raise council tax. Not just because, you know, he wanted to make a point, but because he wanted to make a very lavish point. Have a look at this.
We need to be clear about council tax. Labour would freeze council tax next year using that windfall tax that hasn't been collected. Yes, you heard it right. Not a penny more on your council tax. Not a penny more than the bill you paid last year.
Not a penny more. He's so sure about it, right? It's not just saying, which he could have said, you know, listen, the thing is, we would not want to raise your council tax. We would seek to keep it as low as possible.
Within control,
Obviously, there might be other pressures on it. No, he says, not a penny more. I'm very dramatically saying that as an absolute fact.
Twice. I'm saying that twice. Not a penny more on what you paid last year.
Yeah.
These are out and out lies.
Yeah. I had a psychiatrist on here yesterday asking what's the definition of an inveterate or compulsive liar, and it's him. He's a compulsive liar. He can't stop lying.
It's not only the things that they
you know what one of the things is about compulsive liars? They hate being challenged.
Yeah.
And they get very touchy when they're
challenged. Very defensive. When people are lying and they can't look you in the eye.
Yeah.
It's not only the things that he just forgot to put in the manifesto that they completely just didn't mention, like, I don't know, giving away Chagos and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that the things that he did make commitments on in this woolly, complete tissue of lies kind of manifesto now.
Right.
They were absolute lies.
Yeah, total lies. And he's now being found out every single day of the week. I don't know about Anglophobia, as Steve says, Mike. He says, but I'm beginning to suffer from Angelophobia. Yeah. I know what you mean. Angela, according to the Telegraph, we'll get into this in a bit, is set to make rules on Islam and free speech, right? Basically, she's planning to create a council on Islamophobia. You might remember a picture. Do you remember the picture of her just before the election where she was sat in a room with a load of Muslim leaders up in the north of England, and she was the only woman there, and they were all sitting around her like some kind of ghastly kind of, you know, organised, you know, I don't know, misogynistic meeting. They're not allowed to say that, of course, because, you know, Muslims are not misogynistic. They just make sure that if you're a woman, you have to go in a different room or you have to cover your head. 16-strong council will help advise on creating an official government definition for anti-Muslim discrimination and will provide advice to ministers on tackling Islamophobia. Well, I'm sorry, I don't care about Islamophobia. I don't want a definition of Islamophobia. Why should people from Islam be singled out for special treatment? You know, welcome to Britain. Sit down over there and stop telling us that your God is the great God of all time and that we can't criticise him, right? Just get lost. If you don't fancy it, bugger off back to where you came from.
Mike, that was my first reaction on this. Not only anger that Angela Rayner is planning to apparently appoint the Remainer-in-Chief Dominic Greaves on this, and he's very
useless, right?
He's very friendly on all this.
He's never done anything in his life worth a fag end, right?
No.
He's completely hopeless. Why would you?
Now he's cozying up to Labour, and
I
he's going to
wouldn't give him a job cleaning the office here.
Absolutely, Islam-friendly report. Not only that, but also my reaction was, I don't care. I don't want all this time and resources spent on another new council on Islamophobia.
No.
As you say, this is Britain.
Yeah.
You want to come here? Great.
Right.
Live
First question to all members
with
of
other
the
people.
Islamic faith. Why are you so frightened of women?
Yeah.
Why are you so sure that you are right?
Not just frightened. Why are you so abusive and angry?
Yeah.
And
Why do you have to keep telling us how we have to talk to you? Yeah. You know, how about you just sit down over there and wait your turn, and we'll come to you later. How about that?
Have you seen at Heathrow these posters, Portrait of Britain, and you've got people dressed in full burqas and hijabs and things?
Well, those are just the people working at Heathrow.
Portrait of Britain.
Yeah. Those are just, you come into Heathrow, there's nobody white working there anymore. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, 19 minutes past 6, welcome to Morning Glory. We're talking sense. If you don't like it, call me and tell me why you don't like it, and we'll have a row. We'll have an argument about it. But there's lots to do, lots to talk about. Coming up, we're going to be hearing from Jurgern Meyer. This guy is the Joker of the Week. I think he might win Plank of the Week. He's running GB Energy, right? He hasn't got a clue what he's doing. He was interviewed yesterday by a brilliant young journalist from Sky. We'll play you all of that. Plus, what about a definition for Anglophobia, right? What about that? Well, should we not protect our history, our heritage, and our culture? Should we not get a law against people seeing that and trashing it? I think we should. This is Talk.
About these revelations. Tell us what you've learnt about Keir Starmer.
No, it's not for me to say whether this is for better or for worse. He's not a natural politician.
No.
In fact, he overtly loathes politics. He said so. And we reported that in the aftermath of his suspension of Jeremy Corbyn, which, you know, post facto, he now describes as this great moment of clarity and incision on his behalf.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
23 minutes past 6, a very good morning to you. Welcome to Talk. This is Morning Glory, the home of common sense. Jason Dudley says, Mike and Emma, Mike, for weeks now you've been saying something's going to bring four-tier Kia down. Do you think this is it? Well, it might be. You know, I mean, literally every single week something else, befalls him. He's a pretty unlucky guy. You know, he doesn't seem to have any clue as to how to do his job. And he doesn't even look like he's very happy. And the book that came out at the weekend as well, this new book called Get In, seems to be a complete and utter kind of, a calumnification, if you like, of Keir Starmer and how incapable he is of being Prime Minister. Let's have a voice note, shall we?
Morning, Mike. Pete from Bath here. After thinking about yesterday, I was thinking, imagine Keir Starmer doing your show. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Glory with me, two-tier Keir. Oh my God. Everybody would switch off. In fact, the whole country switched off, I think, from this bloke. Have a great day, Mike.
Thank you very much, Pete, there in Bath, where I used to live.
Pete, can you imagine Keir saying, let's get it on?
Let's get it
That's
on.
Frightening.
Yeah, I've ordered I'm going to keep saying this. I've ordered a voice coach for Christmas, and she's going to be here very shortly.
And
I'll
then
be home later, darling.
Leaps out of her box doing a
leaps out
Mariah
of the box
Carey or something.
with a mask on. Ta-da!
Ta-da!
I mean, very weird. Now, listen, if you thought that was bad, though, I've got some news for you. There's a guy called Jurgern Meyer, who apparently is some kind of energy genius. He's the CEO of GB Energy, this fictitious organisation. You might as well call it the Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah.
He might as well be the Wizard of Oz. And you go, what have you got there? I've got an amazing company over here. What does it do? Not really much of anything. Have you got any employees? Not really, no. Are you going to sell any energy? No. Are you going to make any energy? Not really.
How much is this guy being paid? He's running it. It's the boss.
He'll be on
this
a six-figure
Jurgern
salary,
Meyer
right?
is running this fictitious bunch of nonsense.
He's literally got a box of air.
Yeah.
And he's going, look at this.
And
this is GB Energy. Look at it. I can do this. I can turn it upside down.
He's been
I can
paid
throw it
to
up
do
in the
this.
air. I can, chuck it over my head.
He's the cat in the hat.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
But here he is talking about how your bills are going to come down. Check it out.
It will help bring energy prices down.
When?
Well, it's a matter for government and policy to decide.
But as the boss of this and as someone who is driving forward the ambition of the government, you surely have an idea in your head of when that central pledge to the people of reducing their bills by £300 will come into action.
It is not in the remit of Great British Energy to work out exactly how that energy costing gets through to the consumer.
So what is actually
So
the
what
remit
is actually his
of Great
remit?
British? Also, why has he got the Dale Vince haircut thing going on? What's going on with that?
Why is he
What's
called
doing?
Jurgern Meyer? He's completely British. Right. He promised, this was the pledge, to create 1,000 new jobs in the next 5 years.
Oh, don't worry, we're getting to the jobs in a minute.
Okay.
In fact, here we go. Let's have a look at the Jurgen version of jobs for GB Energy.
The northeast of Scotland will benefit from.
Great British Energy itself is going to create, over the next 5 years, 200 or 300 jobs in Aberdeen. That will be the size of our team. But look, that is...
They were promised 1,000.
Look, and I said, in the very long term, as we become a major energy champion, it may be many more than that.
What's the very long term?
Well, look, we grow these companies. Energy companies grow over 10, 20 years, and we're going to be around in 20 years as a British energy champion.
What's a British energy champion? What does that even mean? These people speak in riddles. It's not a company now, it's a champion, right? So we haven't got any jobs at the moment. When are you going to get some? I don't know. Maybe in 5 years, a couple of hundred, maybe.
And when? Well, we have no business
not
plan.
sure.
We literally have no plan for growth.
But
We
what
don't know.
do? They don't make any energy. They don't extract anything from the ground or pull it down from the sky. They don't have any wind turbines. They don't have any dams. They don't have any electric generators.
But
they have no actual energy whatsoever.
No.
Apart from the energy to give interviews. This is the first interview he's given. As far as I know, he's the only employee of GB Energy.
He will have swanky offices. He will possibly create 200 to 300, yeah, of course, and big salary.
Yeah.
200 to 300 jobs, possibly somewhere around Aberdeen in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Jurgen.
Jurgen, what are you doing? What does he do all day?
What does he do
So he
all
comes
day?
into work, right, sits down. What should we do? GB Energy.
What? Well, does he literally? What does he do?
Any meetings today? No. Are you going to give any jobs? Any job offers? No.
Is there some wind?
No.
Can I harness the wind?
Can we harness
Bit
the
of
wind?
Wave?
No. How about wave energy? Can we harness? No.
Is he based in Aberdeen or London? Where is he?
I don't know. Should we have a couple of meetings with people? Maybe on Zoom. Well, who should we have a meeting with? Ed Miliband is a guy. He's always free for a meeting. Yeah. Let's talk to him. I mean, it's a joke, isn't it?
It'd be really interesting to find out exactly what's going on here. Who's being paid what they do. Literally, what do they do?
I'll tell you what, I'd like
a day in the life.
A day in the life of Jurgern Meyer. You know, what time do you get to work? What do you do until lunchtime?
Gym.
You know,
bit of gym, go to the gym.
You know, you have a bit of counselling.
Scheduling some meetings for 20:45.
Get a voice coach in for a couple of hours. You know, I mean, what do they do?
Do the odd interview like that.
Yeah.
That went well.
Try and get hold of the Prime Minister. Oh, sorry, I'm in Brussels today. Is he back, by the way? Does anybody know? Is Starmer back? Hopefully, he's back in Britain. But it's not a joke, though. GB Energy, this supposedly organisation was going to transform the way that we harness energy, the way that we sell it, the way that we generate it. We're going to have energy security. It's complete and utter, I'm sorry, BS.
And I just want you to play every hour. I want you to play Keir Starmer saying you will not pay a penny more. You will not pay a penny more than you paid last year.
Well, let's have a look.
While council tax bills are going to rise by 10%, maybe even in some places 20-25%. People cannot afford this.
According to the Telegraph,
people are absolute. Does Keir Starmer have any idea?
No, of course not.
People are literally struggling to pay their basic bills.
3 million people will face council tax rises of up to 10% under measures signed off by Angela Rayner. Apparently, in a written ministerial statement, she confirmed that residents in Labour-run Bradford would face the highest proportional bill rise in the country. Bills for 358,000 people in the London borough of Newham, which is run by Labour, and 154,000 residents of Windsor and Maidenhead will all be seeking a rise of between 10% and 25%. Birmingham City Council, which is effectively bankrupt and run by Labour, has been allowed to increase council tax by as much as 7.5% for 1.2 million people.
But 25% increase, people cannot afford that.
No. It's ridiculous.
It really is. I mean, there are serious questions now, I think.
Yeah, absolutely right. Just going back to Angela Rayner and free speech and all the rest of it, not just the Islamic question, but basically Robert Jenrick has said the government should drop its plans for such a deeply flawed definition of Islamophobia. Of course, we should tackle anti-Muslim hate wherever it occurs, but this definition is a Trojan horse for a blasphemy law protecting Islam. You know, and basically that's what we have to be very careful of, isn't it?
And that's why it matters about Dominic Grieve being appointed, because he's written reports in the past, he's written a foreword to a book all about basically just saying how wonderful Islam is and how you know, any criticism. So you can't criticise Christianity in this country, but if you say anything...
Well, have you seen that story?
You can say exactly what you like about Christianity.
Have you seen that story about the guy who burned the Quran at the weekend? And the Manchester police apparently not only arrested him, and I think are still holding him, but they released his name and his address, effectively, including, you know, all details about him, which they would never do if it was somebody who had been arrested for some kind of Islamic crime, right?
Yeah, and Jenrick has been saying, why do Labour MPs think it's acceptable to mock Christianity but not Islam? Time and time again, this Labour government displays an Orwellian disregard for freedom of speech. And I don't want Angela Rayner in charge of this stuff.
No, I don't think
Or Dominic Grieve.
Andy in Cleethorpes says, morning, Mike. I really do not object to Angela Rayner setting up a council on Islamophobia. Any council that she has contact with will usually be bankrupt within a year. Keep up the good work. And Chris says this, Starmer should resign over his breaking lockdown rules. Children could not go to school, but they were sat at home doing Zoom teaching. So why could he not do this? Also, people could not see their families at Christmas. And he attacked Boris for doing exactly the same thing. It's absolutely right. Carl says this from Telford. You do know with this voice trainer on Christmas Eve, nothing will be done. Stalin will not be charged and it will all be blown under the carpet. Sadly, nothing will be done. Well, Carl, you know, watch this space. And even if nothing is done, it will still resonate in the history books for Keir Starmer.
I hope so, and I hope we don't let it drop.
It will mean that he will be even less trusted than he was last week.
It may just be chipping away. It may just be another thing that one can chip away at him, because this is a deeply, deeply dishonest Prime Prime Minister.
Yeah, totally. Couldn't agree more. 6:33, Emma Wolf is here, I'm here. We've got much more to do. What should we talk about next? I don't know. The crime epidemic sweeping Britain and a 15-year-old boy stabbed in school in Sheffield to death. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory at 6:35. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Emma Wolf is here with us as well. We're looking at all the front pages this morning, and lots of them have got all sorts of stories on the front page. The Guardian, bizarrely, goes with a Labour revolt, in fact, for Keir Starmer, amongst all of his other problems that he's got. We were just talking about GB Energy. Apparently, you know, last week there was a court ruling that said, you know, this particular Rosebank oil field should not have been reopened and should now be shut down forever. Well, apparently both Starmer and Rachel Reeves are thinking of challenging that and actually reopening the oil and gas exploration in the North Sea, which goes completely against what Net Zero Ed Miliband is saying. And apparently it's upsetting loads and loads of people in the Labour Party.
And puts them on...
Because it's all about growth.
Yeah, it puts them on a potential clash with Miliband.
Yeah. Silly band, as some people call him.
Silly Miliband, yeah. So, yeah, this is going to be a possible... Can I just say, Mike, I'm really sorry to suddenly swerve.
Yeah.
But I've just seen in the Telegraph this most ludicrous thing, the Scottish NHS, where they get free prescriptions.
Yeah.
OK, a packet of paracetamol costs 37 pence.
Yeah.
In the Scottish NHS, 53, because they give away, they prescribe paracetamol.
Oh, yeah.
So they're giving it to people. It's costing them £8.53 for a pack of paracetamol that you can buy for 37 pence.
But you know, we have the same problem.
That's the problem with the wastage.
Yes.
And we talk about, got to put more money into the NHS. No.
No.
Every single pack.
We have the same problem here. There are people who are prescribed shampoo.
Yes.
There are people who are prescribed conditioner.
Yes.
Which they can easily buy in a shop.
Anything that you can buy in a shop for literally under £1.
Yeah.
And they're getting free prescriptions, and so that is costing the NHS, and that is where millions and millions of pounds is going.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, I could find any number of reasons why the NHS is
as well as all the middle management and the bureaucracy and the wastage.
Right.
But things like that is basic, basic.
One piece of good news from the Scottish part of the world, though, is yesterday we revealed that the SNP were considering banning cats.
Oh, yes.
Right? but they've now apparently rolled back on it after they were mocked ridiculously, not least on this programme, but in other places. So they've now decided, actually, maybe we won't ban cats after all. I mean, to be honest, if you tried herding cats, you know, it's pretty hard to ban them.
Pretty hard.
You know, they are, you know, basically, they might be domesticated animals, but actually, you know, they're quite hard to ban. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. This voice coach visiting Labour HQ on Christmas Eve sounds suspiciously like a drinks party to me. And what I'd like to know is who else was there, who else visited Labour HQ, travelled maybe from all over the country, from 50 miles away or more on Christmas Eve. Do they really expect us to believe that there was only the young Tories dancing around drunk, making fools of themselves when they shouldn't have been?
Well,
it's a really good question.
It's got a sniff of eggnog about it, hasn't it? You know, come for a few canapes.
Absolutely.
And a bit of a Christmas drinky poos.
Yeah.
And then go back to Brighton on an empty train. I don't know if we've got the picture, but she put out, funnily enough, this voice coach, the Shakespearean actor, she put out a picture of her journey to London on that very day, right? And there it is, because she was like, oh, isn't it amazing? Such a quiet train.
Yeah.
And she wasn't supposed to be travelling anywhere, because she wasn't a key worker unless she was made one. So I'm sorry, she's literally banged to rights, isn't she?
I think so, and she's also got links with Ed and, what was it, Justine Miliband, and he's another one that can't deliver a... that has a terrible... So she just... I don't think this is very good for her business, Mike.
No, I mean, maybe she just specialises in dealing with people who can't speak.
Oh, OK, the Nasal Knights.
Yeah, and make the Nasal Knights. It could be a sort of punk rock band, couldn't it?
Miliband and Keir
the Nasal Knights. More seriously, let's look at the front page of the Daily Express. Lots of people have got loads of pictures of the Grammys. I couldn't care less about the Grammys. We're not touching it. We're not doing it.
Good.
You know, Kanye West, you know, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Nine Danker, I think.
Nine Danker, yeah.
We're not doing it.
Don't give a
very serious story on their front page.
Yeah.
A boy of 15 was stabbed to death at a school yesterday after a messaging row between pupils. This is where we are now in this country. You've got a young son.
Every single day we see...
absolutely terrified.
Absolutely.
Right, of where he's going to go to school. He'll probably be OK for his primary school. But once they get to the age of about 11 or 12, you know, I was very sure that I did not want to raise my children in London. You know, I was very sure I didn't want to raise my daughter in New York. You know, she got to the age of 2 and I was like, we're leaving. And we came back to Britain and we ended up living in the countryside, you know, because eventually all parents, if they can, would not want to put their kids at risk. I mean, your kid will be at risk, I'm sorry to say this to you, just travelling on the tube or the bus when he's about 12 or 13.
That is absolutely terrifying.
You know? Isn't it?
But every single day. But I went to school in London. It just wasn't like this. It just wasn't like this.
Nobody tried to stab me in the entire time that I grew up here.
And you know what? We could buy knives in any supermarket. There were knives in our kitchen drawers. There was never any risk.
Well,
and we
most
travelled
of my friends had
on the
pen
underground
knives.
every day. Everybody had a Swiss Army knife.
You'd bring a Swiss Army knife to
All
school,
my brothers
no
had Swiss Army knives. Exactly. Every single day there are stabbings in this country. Every single day there's a woman who's been attacked. It's absolutely appalling. It's not even news anymore. It should be. This is appalling, and this 15-year-old died.
And there's a piece in the Mail today, page 15, written by somebody called Barney Shand, which is a pseudonym.
Yeah.
He says, I've had 2 iPhones, an iPad and a Rolex stolen in 4 London muggings in just 1 year. The police's response was, you're lucky you haven't been stabbed.
And you've had
it. Great.
You had your phone stolen, didn't you?
I had my phone nicked, yeah. Which doesn't, you know, it doesn't make me a hero or anything like that, but it shows you that it's just happening all the time.
But it's happening all the time.
I had a lovely cab driver yesterday. I was literally standing by a bus stop in Bermondsey, near where I live, waiting for a bus home, and he stopped. His name's Lee, and he says, listens to the show every morning. He said, jump in, I'll give you a lift. And we started talking about stuff, and he was like, you know, this is happening all over the places. Everywhere he drives, every single day, there's some kind of incident of either somebody, and he was saying all around Surrey Quays, which is not far from where I live, people are getting their phones stolen all the time, and they run down into the tube and get away, or they're on in my case, the guy was on a moped. Electric bikes have now become, you know, accessories to crime. You see people on electric bikes all the time.
Swerving along the pavement, grabbing phones.
Swerving along the pavements, grabbing phones, because it's an easy escape for them.
Mike, where I live in, sort of Clerkenwell round the Barbican, sort of on the edge of Islington, the police are everywhere at the moment. And I was talking to a police officer yesterday. I said, what's going on around here?
Yeah.
And he said, well, this big hotel, it's called the Thistle Hotel. It's on Central Street.
I know it.
I used to do sort of little conferences there and it was work training. It's become a migrant hotel.
Has it?
And apparently it's an absolute no-go zone now. No-go zone.
Just
for
a den of robbery.
12, 13-year-old girls can't walk down the street.
Right.
And I'm talking about local people that live there,
Yeah.
like I have, for over 10 years.
Right.
Can't walk down the street, and it's terrifying for parents, for any young people just walking to and from school.
Right.
It's become, as you say, a no-go zone.
Well, do you
and
remember
that's
the story
Central
I think,
London.
a few weeks ago from Altrincham up in Manchester, where they put a load of migrants in a hotel right next to a girls' school, and people were going, what the hell are you thinking? And we're seeing more and more reports, by the way, of these guys going down and taking photographs or filming girls as they walk in and out of school.
Yeah,
it's absolutely disgusting.
To put it in a really, to put it politely, they have different attitudes.
When is somebody going to talk
women.
about this? You know, and these, supposed feminists in the Labour Party, when are they going to talk about the misogyny? And they talk about, the Home Office, misogyny is as bad as terrorism. Yeah, but funnily enough, it's being perpetrated by the same people that perpetrate the terrorism.
Well, this is why the grooming gang scandal has gone uncovered for so many decades.
Out to be the world's worst bloke.
Yeah.
What about all these scumbags who are coming here from countries where women have no rights? And they're picking and preying on young white women. What the hell is going on?
But that's how the grooming gangs cover-up has happened.
Yeah.
That's how Rochdale has happened.
Exactly. Chris in Newbury says this, Mike, if Starmer had a lesson Christmas Eve, then she can produce an invoice and he can produce a receipt. Shouldn't take them more than 5 minutes. Very good point.
Let's see it.
And Rachel says, I'm a devout Christian and I don't like hearing the Lord's name taken in vain, but I'm also a proud Brit who believes in free speech. We don't need blasphemy laws introduced by the back door. I've been asking for people to give me a reason or a definition, if you like, of Anglophobia, people who are frightened of this country. Dear Mike, Islamophobia, as far as I know, a phobia is defined as an irrational fear. Surely the way some extreme Islamists have been behaving, then the fear of Islamists is entirely rational. Therefore, there is no such thing as Islamophobia. George from Luton.
Absolutely.
Very good point.
Very good
And talking about what is frightening about those people who hate England, great piece again in the Mail by Daniel Hannon, who basically talks about why the people who run this country hate it. Why do we refuse to deport illegal entrants, even those who have gone on to commit serious crimes? Why are we decarbonising back to the Stone Age when almost no other country is following? Why do we import energy from nasty regimes while closing down our cleaner homegrown industries? Why do we back the International Criminal Court's claims against an elected head of government, Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu? The answer to each question is the same: Hermerism, Starmerism. Let's call it Harmerism.
Yeah.
Because that's also including the Attorney General, who once took part in some kind of Palestinian, prorogation to say that he would be in favour of clamping down on Israel's genocide.
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece by Daniel Hannan, isn't it? And it's about Starmer's obsession with human rights law, with obsession with global...
Which trumps everything else, right?
Legal maximalism, he calls it. It's a really, really interesting piece. Above our national interest.
Yeah.
Global interest above all else.
Yeah.
Human rights law, that's his obsession.
Yes.
And he's never really backed Britain.
No.
Starmer's never... And that is a frightening...
He doesn't believe in Britain, does he?
That is a frightening place for us to be with a Prime Minister at this time who doesn't back Britain, really.
Yeah.
I mean, no wonder Trump is just laughing at us.
Exactly right. We'll come to Trump in a moment. Em Wolf is here. It's coming up to 6:46 in the morning. We've got loads going on here. There's a lot of opinions that we've got. We'd like to hear some of yours as well. Don't forget, you can send us a voice note, 0344 499 1000. Yesterday we had a lot of fun with Starmer's impersonations. We don't have to do quite so many of those today. But I think he's still deep in the doo-doo over this voice coach business. Was it really a voice coach lesson, or was it something else? This is Talk.
full-length runway in Britain was built in the 1940s. No progress in 80 years. A third runway could increase potential GDP by 0.43% by 2050.
Could a new runway be built that abides with carbon targets, concerns around noise pollution and concerns around air pollution?
That a third runway at Heathrow would unlock further growth, boost investment, increase exports and make the UK more open and more connected.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:49. I'm Mike Graham. Lots going on. Enough is enough, says Carolina in Bath. Mike and Emma. Starmer is from now on known by his second name, Rodney, and he is a plonker. Plonker, Rodney, you plonker. He's not fit for office and he has to go. He's a sanctimonious hypocrite of the highest order. Absolutely right.
Carolina, I'm going to call him the warthog.
You've got it in.
I think he's a warthog.
Warthog,
He looks like one. He sounds like one. He's got that nasally, snuffly warthog thing.
Absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Mark on Islamophobia.
Mark from Essex. We live in a Judeo-Christian society. A lot of our rules, laws and systems of government are based around the Judeo-Christian faith. We have very strong, well-enforced anti-discriminatory laws in this country. When was the last time you saw a march demonstrating against Islam and Muslims? The only marches I see demonstrating against some sort of religious faith are the ones against the Jews. And they don't seem to be worried about protecting them. What I can see is that they're trying to enforce their voting base along with the 16-year-olds and people coming here from illegally. This is an absolute joke, and I'm spitting feathers about the way we're being treated in this country. Cheers, mate.
Mark, I don't blame you. Absolutely right. To be sick to death of it. Spitting feathers. A lot of people are. Talk about spitting feathers. How about this in the Times this morning? The NHS has refused to publish in full a report exposing the failings in the treatment of paranoid schizophrenic, what's his face?
Valdo
Callicane, the Nottingham killer, because they're saying that patient confidentiality and data protection prevents them from sharing the information. Sorry, the patient's privacy is not an issue here, is it? 3
people were killed.
Yeah.
This was a report which presumably we've paid for via the NHS, a 200-page report.
Yeah.
And the NHS England is only going to publish an executive summary that's a few dozen pages long. And the victims' families have been told that this is because the report contained Callicane's confidential medical details. And the families are really upset, really
And these are the families of the 2 students, Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, both 19 years of age, and Ian Coates, who was 65. You know, we've spoken to these families on a regular basis, and they are the most genuine and great people that you would ever wish to meet, and they're being treated absolutely outrageously.
And look, make no doubt, there were so many failings along the way here on the mental health services, on the within the NHS, and also the police. And people that were in contact with this killer, and it was just let to go each time. It was just left, you know, they didn't follow it up properly. So that's why the report's probably not being published.
Absolutely disgraceful. We found a clip, by the way, of Angela Rayner. We talked about it earlier on. We referred to it. This is her version of trying to get some kind of law on Islamophobia defined. This is her speaking to Muslims in her own constituency, Ashton-under-Lyme, back in May of last year. Check it out.
And if Labour get into power, we will recognise Palestine. I will push not only to recognise, but there is nothing to recognise at the moment, sadly. It's decimated. We have to rebuild Palestine. We have to rebuild Gaza. That takes more than just recognising it. It takes resources. It takes infrastructure. It takes expertise. We need teachers. We need civil servants. We need all of the infrastructure. That's a big job.
She's sitting there completely covered up, not wearing the usual, you know, mini skirt, flashing her legs at Boris Johnson, like she used to do. Oh no, none of that for the Muslim leaders, you know, the mullahs.
Demure dress.
Demure dress, and she's talking about rebuilding Palestine. Why don't you start with rebuilding Ashton-under-Lyne, or Rochdale, or Oldham, and some of the places where all of this horrendous grooming has gone on, and sex rape gangs has gone on. How about rebuilding those communities first?
I think that's the key here, is that we just want our British politicians. It's like George Galloway. This was for Gaza. And people are going, hang on a minute.
Yeah, right.
You're a British politician. You've been elected to represent your constituents, British people.
Right.
But of course, they're more worried, especially in these constituencies. They're more worried about representing other faiths and groups.
Let's talk about Donald Trump, because we haven't given him too much of a mention so far this morning. Yesterday, I mean, you should have seen, you know, the vapours that were going on at Sky News, you know, where they kept saying, oh, you know, there's going to be world crashes, you know, the financial markets are all going to crash and burn. No. You know, in the end, it's going to be more expensive for Americans. He put tariffs on Mexico, he put tariffs on Canada, and guess what? Both of them folded yesterday and agreed to do things that he wanted them to do. And so he's now postponed the tariffs until a month from now.
It is so good to see someone, to see strongman diplomacy working.
Totally.
It's literally strongman diplomacy works.
Yeah.
Full stop.
It does. The end. You know, that's
Starmer, it does work.
Yeah, threaten them with something because you've got a big stick to beat them with.
He said he was going to do that. He didn't lie. He said he was going to do this. He said he was going to make America great again. Yeah. And that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
How many executive orders did he sign on his first day?
Well, I mean, I've got a list here, which I'm going to read out in a minute. But these are all the things that he's done in the first, like, literally 2 weeks. Incredible. It's an incredible list, including mass deportation of illegals, DEI programmes ended, gender ideology eliminated, pronouns removed from all government
Literally,
emails.
everybody, the feathers were fluttering, the pearls were twitching. Yeah.
One of my favourite new people on the public space is Caroline Levitt. Who is the new White House press secretary?
Oh, yeah, she's brilliant, isn't she?
She's absolutely brilliant. Here she is talking about Elon Musk cancelling international development.
And here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look. Because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government. Thank you, guys.
Brilliant. There you go. Caroline Levitt, absolutely.
She's so
gold
brilliant.
Star. Gold star. She's absolutely right.
She is, and she looks so innocent. She comes out with this stuff.
Fantastic.
She's a killer. And did you see her talking about, I think, £10 million for condoms in Gaza? It was just absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, it beggars belief.
Starmer couldn't even stay yesterday in the EU. He couldn't even take a side. He just said, well, we work with both our partners. The EU and the US are both very important to us, and we're not going to take sides on this. He can't even have a position on anything.
No, he can't.
He has no backbone, no authority.
And on the other hand, you know, let's look at a couple of other stories. A big story we're going to be talking about later on in the Daily Mail, page 9, crackdown on fat jabs at chemists. Apparently, people are going to chemists now and getting all these fat jabs because they don't have to worry too much about going to their own doctor. They don't want to get the ones online because they might be dangerous. But this is also dangerous, isn't it?
They're really dangerous. And look, we've talked about this before, but people are literally just filling out a little questionnaire, tick, 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 5 questions, whatever. I know plenty of people who are not medically obese, who don't need it, who are using it. They're ordering it online, they're going into chemists, whatever. The checks and balances are not there. And they probably should be. I don't know where I come down on. I used to think that Wegovy and Mount Jaro and all of that was a terrible way to lose a significant amount of weight. But then again, maybe, I don't know. Look, it's not safe. It's not safe to be buying this stuff.
Safe. You know, I would not be comfortable saying to my daughter, for example, you should take this, or saying
you should be injecting this
stuff
without proper medical screening
or
ongoing screening. And also, what's the plan like? Are people going to take this forever? What are the long-term? We don't have long-term data.
Nobody
we do
knows.
not have the long-term data.
do know enough about how some people have been very badly affected by taking
we do.
it, and they've been very ill as a result. Finally, one more thing. Reform surging ahead in a new poll. This is a poll that was done, I think, actually for Sky News, a YouGov poll. It's got Reform leading. Not only going neck and neck with Labour, but actually leading. Yeah,
and we've seen, I mean, OK, it's always, you know, there's a margin of error and all of that stuff, and I think they're 1% ahead of Labour, and the Conservatives 4% ahead of the Conservatives.
The Tories would love a margin of error.
Yeah, they would. But we are
they're
seeing
behind.
Now more and more of these polls coming out, putting Reform neck and neck or ahead. Yeah. And that has to be a worry for Labour. Well, we know it is, because they're also trying to... They've got, like, anti-reform little committees and, you know, plans to...
Squeaky bum time,
Squeaky bum time, yes,
Keir
absolutely.
Starmer. Or was that just on Christmas Eve? I don't know. Not for me to say. Anyway, listen, great to see you. Emma Wolf, thank you very much indeed. I'll just go through some of the other things that Trump has done. Over $3 trillion invested in the US economy since he got into power on the 20th of January, right? We're talking literally, you know, less than 14 days. Mexico caved in, Canada caved in, Panama caved in, Colombia caved in, Venezuela caved in. Border crossings are actually down by 95%. People are actually walking back across the Mexican border for fear of being deported. I mean, that's how ridiculous it's got.
And guess what? If you have borders, people then don't try and breach them. Exactly. Meanwhile, we are hearing, sorry to come back in, but the French staff apparently are not really working much at weekends, so the channel's not really properly policed.
Of course not.
French border staff don't really want to do le weekend.
No. They don't. Well, welcome to...
I wonder, are crossings up at weekends? I bet you anything, crossings...
They probably are.
Illegal crossings,
It's like when the Border Force went on strike, actually more people didn't come to the country because they used to come more when the Border Force were working. Anyway, Morning Glory, more after the news.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. A shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or far ball, slides it in. An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. It's still dark out there. You might remember yesterday we had the most amazing sunrise, and I was waxy lyrical about it. So many of you actually sent in pictures of the sunrise where you were. It's starting to look a little bit similar right now. There's a sort of an amber, shall we say, streak going across the skyline of the London sort of skyscraper line as well, and it's all looking rather nice. But it's a bit milder today. It's not as cold as it was. I actually think, and I don't know if I've been a bit premature here, that there's a bit of a spring-like step in the air. You know, I noticed it when I came back from the beach on Sunday because the sun was shining quite well, and despite the fact that it started out pretty chilly, as I walked back to the house, back down the garden path as it were, I could hear birds singing, bird song, the sun was shining, it felt warm, the car was actually warm from the sunshine on it, the dog was happy. You know, it wasn't cold. There was no, you know, breath coming out of my mouth. It was, you know, there was definitely a sign of spring going on. So I'm quite optimistic about the future. And I know that many of you say to me, how on earth can you be optimistic about this complete and utter shambles of a government? Well, the reason I can be optimistic is because I know that they're not long for this world. I know that Keir Starmer is soon to be the ex-Prime Minister of this country. Nobody in the Labour Party likes him. Nobody inside the Cabinet particularly likes him. Even Morgan McSweeney, I think, has worked out, and he's his Chief of Staff, that this man is not long for this job because he just can't hack it. We saw him yesterday over in Brussels talking to the head of NATO, whose name escapes me for the moment. It was so dull. I mean, it's probably the dullest press conference I think I've ever seen. The only thing that was good about it was the fact that the Sun reporter, the intrepid Jack Elson, actually asked him a question about his voice coach and whether he broke any rules over COVID. And he got very tetchy and stormed off. Well, we haven't stopped asking that question. We won't stop until we get to the truth. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need to call us on. You can send us a voice note there as well. Sunil Sharma is going to be with us. He's political commentator, host of the Rational Voices with Sunil podcast. We'll be asking him about a whole bunch of stuff, including what's the point of GB Energy, please? Can anybody explain what it is that they do? Jurgern Meyer, who's the CEO, apparently, with a funny haircut, he came out yesterday and gave his first interview ever to a young man from Sky News up in Scotland, and it made absolutely no sense. It's comedy gold. We'll keep playing it all through the day. Also, Caroline Leavitt, what a great woman. She's the new press secretary of the White House. She is absolutely kicking it to death over there in the US of A. Donald Trump, mind you, is also absolutely lording it over the entire world. You know, he told Canada to get their act together. They did. He told Mexico to get their act together. They did. He told Colombia to do it. He told Venezuela to do it. Soon he's going to tell the EU to do it. And the EU think they're going to fight him. Really? You think? Well done. I wouldn't bother if I were you. I'd just surrender like you normally do every time anybody enters your country. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Let's kick things off, shall we, with Angela Rayner, because she, of course, is a woman who is supposedly the Deputy Prime Minister, but she's not really, because everybody knows that Pat McFadden's the real Deputy Prime Minister. But a new book that's come out, which is called Get In, has painted Angela Rayner as quite a divisive figure in the Labour movement, quite a divisive left-winger as well, because she's got the backing of all the unions, she's got quite a lot of support in the sort of what you might call the rank-and-file left-wing part of the Labour Party, and she did at one point think about actually taking a tilt at Keir Starmer when he tried to fire her back in the 2021-2022 era because he thought she was getting a bit big for her boots. So, meanwhile, on the front page of The Telegraph today, it says that Rayner's going to set new rules on Islam and free speech. She wants to get a definition of Islamophobia, and she wants to give the job of finding it to Dominic Grieve, former Conservative Attorney General, a prominent Remainer. He's been recommended as chairman of a new 16-strong council, which will somehow come up with a definition of Islamophobia. A lot of people feel very, very reticent about this and really don't think it's a good idea because it's a blasphemy law by the back door. And we don't have those in this country, I don't think, and I think it would be a massive mistake to get them. Let's talk to Sunil Sharma and see what he makes of it. Sunil, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
I mean, we'll get on to Starmer and his voice coach in a minute, which is a very amusing and possibly very damaging story for him. But I just thought I'd get your view on this whole Islamophobia scenario, because we don't do blasphemy laws in this country, and neither should we. What is Angela Rayner up to?
No, you know, we don't do these sort of laws in this country. I think it's just another example of the state just trying to have more and more power, more and more say in our day-to-day lives. It started rapidly, I think, post-COVID with the lockdowns. And one of the always scary things I find when a state gets more and more power, very few people, very few governments will ever relax those powers. They almost get power hungry. And I think Angela Rayner, the Labour Party, have seen an opportunity to get even more power and control the way we speak, control more about our day-to-day lives. And I think it's really, really worrying. I think this freedom of speech, we're seeing it already on social media with the way the police are arresting people for social media posts. I think this is just another example of more and more sort of tyrannic reign of the Labour Party and Angela Rayner. And I think Angela Rayner's true far left colours are coming out now. This is a woman who really supported Jeremy Corbyn. He was a really key ally. She was a really key ally of his time in power. So I think we're really starting to see the real true colours, if you like, of Angela Rayner.
Yeah, I think so, because this new book that's come out, Get In, written by two Sunday Times journalists, is a very fascinating insight, not only into Keir Starmer's mind, but also into the kind of the machine that is the Labour Party. And the picture that it paints is not a very pleasant one. It talks about Sue Gray coming into to the machine and not being welcomed with open arms by people like Morgan McSweeney, that there was so much rancour between the two of them, they had to work in separate offices, that when they were planning for taking over the government, there was literally no planning going on. She was tasked with coming up with, the plot for the first 100 days, didn't really do it. As soon as they got into Downing Street, they were rowing, trying to kind of outdo each other, and Starmer seems to kind of sit there and really just do what the first or last person in the room tells him to do. It sounds like a terribly chaotic organisation to me.
I think this cabinet that's in power right now is probably the worst cabinet we've seen in British history. There is zero business acumen here. You compare it, I heard you talk about Trump earlier on, and you look at the people he's around and the calibre of people that he has in his cabinet. They're all formidable, incredibly smart people. And you look at what Sir Keir Starmer has around him, and some of these people, I don't think they've had a serious job or in their lives in terms of, outside of politics. They're clearly incapable when it comes to any economic policies. But I also think a lot of their political policies, it just seem as if they're based off university campuses. They don't seem like there's any deep thinking whatsoever with this group of people. So I think as bad as Sir Keir Starmer has been, I think that the rest of his team around him are also just as bad. I don't see anyone within his immediate cabinet that has any sort of brain to do anything.
And he's a man who clearly wants to be taken seriously, wants to be considered to be a kind of a world leader, wants to be on the world stage, but he doesn't act like somebody who is actually confident. He doesn't act like somebody who has got the command of all that he surveys. And he's very tetchy whenever he gets questioned about anything. Let's have a look at what happened yesterday. He was over in Brussels. We didn't really see much from the EU perspective, but we saw that he had a press conference with NATO in which he sort of basically pledged to keep working with NATO. But it was kind of not... It was all pretty pointless, but right near the end, Jack Elsom from The Sun asked him about the voice coach and whether he broke any rules over COVID. Have a look.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely working?
I mean, he's like indignant that any journalist should ask him a terrible, terrible question like, did you break the rules over COVID? Of course not. I mean, he's like a sort of tetchy teenager, isn't he? You'd expect that from a 15-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing Sir Keir Starmer should be doing is asking for a refund from this voice coach. I don't know what this voice coach has added into Sir Keir Starmer's profile, because to me, whenever there's close to zero charisma from him. So I don't know what this person has brought into Sir Keir Starmer's life or into his journey in politics. But it's very true. It's almost, I think he's going for that. I'm just an ordinary good guy. How dare you ask me anything to question my characteristics or question anything I do. I think because in some ways the Labour Party has been such a mess for the last 10, 15 years, and then also the way the Tory party self-destructed, over the last couple of years, I don't think he's actually had to get. There's not been a lot of questioning towards Sir Keir Starmer. People were so angry with what was going on in the Tory party and the way they were almost killing each other on a regular basis.
Right.
I think a lot of people almost let Sir Keir Starmer off the hook. I don't think he got the scrutiny as an opposition leader in normal times that he should have got. And I think now, unfortunately, we're seeing this scrutiny applied to him, and we're seeing how bad he's doing to it. And the unfortunate thing is, he's actually now the Prime Minister, not just an opposition leader.
Yeah.
And I think that's concerning.
And again, knowing what we know from this book that's just come out, he doesn't appear to have any great ideology, really. You know, they describe him, even inside his own party, as an HR manager. You know, Morgan McSweeney, again, doesn't apparently have any respect for him as a political kind of, guiding light. Tony Blair, who was asked about him, said he's a bit like John Smith, but without the charisma. He's not a nutcase like Gordon Brown, but he's not really somebody that we could place all of our faith in. You know, he's a highly uninspiring individual. And he's going to cost the Labour government, at the end of the day, the next election, because he simply hasn't got the ability to be Prime Minister. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think there's a lot of parallels to compare with, so if you like, the Democratic Party in the US. There is a real lack of ideas, lack of philosophy coming from the left in general, and I think a lot of it, they've been almost captured by the far left movement within their own groups, and I think they almost need to steer away from that. I think it's very hard for them to move away because of the amount of power. Although Corbyn's not there anymore, I think his deputies, the Angela Rayners of the world, these kind of profiles of people are so still ingrained in the Labour Party, and I think they've completely lost their way. I think, traditionally Labour would have been the people for the working class people. These people seem so out of touch with the working class. They seem like they have no interest in trying to help the working class. And I think one of the reasons Keir Starmer spends more time abroad than he does in the UK, I just don't think he feels comfortable in the UK. Outside of Westminster, I don't think he has any idea what goes on in the country. I don't think he wants to. I think he feels really happy to be around bureaucrats, be around people like NATO, EU, where he can sit there and be the outside voice and, say a few words. I think he really likes that environment. Actually helping the everyday Brit, I don't think is his top priority.
No, I don't think he does. And I'm going to be saying to people all the way through the show today, give us an example or a definition, if you like, of Anglophobia, because forget about Islamophobia. I think there are people in this Labour government, and I count Keir Starmer among them, who actually hate Britain. I don't think they have any time for British people. They certainly don't have any idea what British people want or what they feel or how they're inspired. They don't like British history. They don't like British culture. They don't like the idea that we might have had at one time an empire which actually straddled the world and did great things. They don't like any of that. They don't like remembering it. They don't want it taught in schools. They don't want to have to actually answer to anyone in the European Union. Keir Starmer yesterday decided to do what? To go to the European Union, cap in hand, and sort of, get down on his hands and knees and beg them to take them back into some kind of trade relationship, which is already existing anyway. I mean, I don't understand what Keir Starmer hates about Britain, but I would love it if somebody could give us a definition of what is now Anglophobia.
I think you summed it up perfectly. This group of people have a serious disdain towards Britain, especially the working class people of Britain. Yeah. I don't know where it stemmed from. I don't know where it's come from. I think a lot of it is their new purpose, this kind of constantly talking about the white guilt and all this sort of issues. And I think it's so bad. And we're seeing it in the UK now. You look at the lowest and worst performing group of people, it's white British boys.
Yeah.
The numeracy rates are getting worse, the literacy rates are getting worse. And these group of people, these boys are going to turn into men, and these men are going to have to get jobs at some point. It is so bad for our job productivity as an economy. It's absolutely terrible, and they will never address this issue. Instead, they will continue to teach these kids that they should feel guilty, they should damage their confidence, you should, almost be submissive to everything around you. And it's exactly why he is going to the EU almost with a begging bowl and asking, look at the comments Macron's made towards Sir Keir Starmer and Britain, and he's still there having these conversations with him. I think a normal strong leader would have probably left the Brussels at this point after those comments and said, okay, I think you're really out of order for saying that.
Exactly.
We're going to focus on interests.
Yeah, but he won't do that. I mean, I thought exactly that yesterday, Sunil, when I looked at Macron and his kind of, puffing himself up to his full height of, 4 feet 3.5 and saying, Brexit has failed. Yeah, well, how about your government's failed, matey? How about the fact that you've lost 2 elections? The only reason you're still hanging on for grim life is because you've done some dodgy, scruffy, horrible, dastardly deals with people on the far left to stop right-wingers from taking over your government, which is their rightful place because they got the biggest vote in the last election. So don't talk to me about failed governments and failed government decisions, because France is an absolute basket case. Thanks.
But the whole of the EU is right now, and this is again the really bizarre timing of Sir Keir Starmer going to Brussels. Europe as a continent has some of the lowest growing economies in the world. You look at Germany in a deep economic crisis, but even by their own standards, they've said that this is the worst economic period since 1990, since the reunification. This is the worst period in German economic history right now in the last 25 years. What is the attraction right now in Europe? These are economies that are faltering. These are economies that are going backwards in terms of growth. What Sir Keir Starmer should be doing is looking at he should be saying, well, this is a great opportunity. We've got the United States of America who are going to put tariffs on the EU. We could potentially take advantage of this and become closer out of an economy that's doing better. You've got parts of Asia that's performing very well, even parts of Africa that are doing really well, to look at trade deals and all this stuff. But this obsession with the European Union, I think it's just to be around those bureaucrats, to be around those profile of people, make them feel more superior than they are. Yeah. They've obviously got elite class they feel very happy and comfortable with, rather than actually sitting and thinking, I need to put Britain first. What are the best British interests? Maybe I'll have to go outside of Europe. Maybe I'll have to actually look at home, try to help small businesses and get rid of this GB energy nonsense and focus on the fact that oil has revolutionized this country, and we should actually maybe say thank you to oil. If it wasn't for oil, wouldn't be as far as we are as a civilization. All these kind of ideas he could be doing, but instead he wants to cozy up with Macron, with Germany, with the other EU leaders, because I think that's where he feels comfortable. It's not good for the country. Yeah. I think it's only good for him and his ego.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's good for N1, the Islington Mafia, if you like. Sunil, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Of course, just talking about GB Energy there, Richard Tice has got a tweet out right now in which it says China's bumper coal consumption has gone up. Record coal use in China, an extra 800 million tonnes of carbon in 1 year equals double the UK saving of 400 million tonnes per year since 1990. So we're totally irrelevant, yet killing jobs and industries and impoverishing our own people. Exactly right. What's the point of it all? Let's get a voice note from James on the voice coach.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn. Well, he shut it down very quickly, didn't he, yesterday? I mean, it was brilliant. The COVID rules broken? Of course not. And he walks away very calmly. All the COVID rules were followed. Yeah, but not by you. I spent quite a lot of time on X last night. I think the game's up for him. As he said to Boris, the game's up. The game's up, Mike. He'll be gone. I said to you at the start of the year, I'm moving my schedule up. He'll be gone by May.
Moving it up. Interesting. I've always said he'd be gone by Christmas, but, you might be right. Quentin Letts, Emma Wolf mentioned this morning, is already brilliant. He's written a sketch yesterday of Starmer in Brussels with Mark Rutte. I think that's how you pronounce it, R-U-T-T-E, who's the head of NATO. He says, pity poor Leonie, she's the voice coach, a voice coach to this bunged-up hedgehog ball of frowns. I mean, what a great description of Starmer. Absolute disgrace of a man who apparently is our great leader. It's 21 minutes past 7. We're going to talk next about a man who actually is a proper leader, Donald Trump, 47th President of the United States of America, who has got the world jumping up and down every time he asks them to. This is Talk.
But the key thing about tariffs is, I mean, free trade, we know, makes people richer. It keeps goods cheaper. It does have an issue for countries where they're competing with other countries that have got, say, lower wage costs, lower energy costs, lower regulation. But tariffs, we know, US consumers will be paying more for the goods that they import. I mean, they're going to have to pay higher prices, which is kind of the opposite of what Donald Trump promised at the election about helping people with the cost of living.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 25 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. Deezy says, Mike, can you recall when Two-Tier was last seen with the people that put him in office? I can only recall that minute he spent in Southport. It's evidently clear that he looks out at the 2 out of 10 who voted for him with disdain. Disgraceful. Well, I think that's absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Andy on the voice coach.
Good morning, Mike. Andy here on the middle. Great show, as always. Just in relation to the Starmer thing, I don't understand why it couldn't have been done over the phone. I know people's children who have speech therapy and things like that. That's done by Zoom and things. I don't understand why she had to travel to London in order to do that. Now, surely that was against the law at the time. So surely that needs looking into, or is it another case of two-tier policing? Cheers, Mike.
Yeah, it is absolutely two-tier. Is anyone here? Can you hear my voice? You know, the voice note specialist has arrived. I've ordered a voice coach for Christmas, as I said yesterday. There's more to it, isn't there? There's got to be. There's got to be more to it. I don't know what there is to it. Maybe you can help me out with that. But let's talk now to Lucas Coleman, director of the World Trade Center in San Diego, because Donald Trump has had quite a day, quite a sort of every 24-hour period that he's been in charge since the 20th of January seems to have been pretty, important. For the state of the United States of America. He's paused punitive tariffs on Mexico after they agreed to deploy 10,000 troops to the southern border to stem the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrant crossings. Canada is kind of promising to do more as well. So, in a way, all of the sort of the dreaded, tariff nightmares that were going to be beset upon the world's economic markets appear to have been slightly exaggerated, shall we say. Lucas, a very good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. The clock's approaching midnight here, but it's been a very hectic week.
I appreciate you staying up for it. Yeah, I mean, I've got a list here of all the things that Donald Trump has done since he's been in charge, which is just over 2 weeks, right? Over $3 trillion investment in the US economy, border crossings down 95%, mass deportations of illegals, Israeli hostages coming home, DEI programs ended, gender ideology eliminated, and I could go on, but you get the drift. I mean, considering we have a government here that does about one thing every sort of 24 months, this is quite remarkable. He's doing an awful lot of stuff, and most of it seems to be working, doesn't it?
Well, he's certainly been moving with dizzying speed. A lot of it's been done through executive order, and so whether that can last between administrations will be seen. But certainly a lot happening, and the news cycle has been moving very fast in the past couple weeks with all that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the tariff restrictions that he wanted to put on people, there was a lot of, shall we say, naysayers, wasn't there, in the last few weeks or last few days as well, saying, oh, this will be terrible for American consumers, it'll be awful for the markets around the world, it'll be really, really bad in the end for pricing. But actually, a lot of what he's done seems to have been, as a short-term economic manoeuvre, pretty successful, no?
Well, it's to be seen. Some of the tariffs did get implemented or did go into effect today with China. About 10 to 15% tariff retaliation from China is something that we're seeing right now. But certainly for Mexico and Canada, it seems like for a month, we've been able to stave off some of the negative consequences, but it's adding a lot of uncertainty for businesses, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, the people that I speak to in America, and I spent a lot of time there, I've got family who live there, they're like, well, you know, if you want to buy a Chinese car, you know, why should it be cheaper than an American car? If you want to buy, you know, Chinese goods, why should they be undercutting the stuff that's made in America? And that's a fairly regular thought for a lot of people, isn't it?
Well, true, but I think an important distinction needs to be made, and one is that not all trade is created equal. And to demonstrate that, 40% of U.S. imports from Mexico actually contain U.S.-made content. So there's a figure thrown around that before an automobile is fully complete and sold to the consumer, it crosses an international border 6 to 8 times. And so in that way, we really make things together, and especially in this binational mega region where I sit in San Diego, California, it's a co-production supply chain. And a similar story can be said about Canada. Now, contrast that with U.S. trade with China, where only about 4% of imports from China contain U.S.-made content. So the nature of the U.S. trading relationship with its North American partners is drastically different from the trading relationship with a country like China, who we have long-term major power competition with.
Yes. No, I think I get that. And I would be more in favour, I suppose, of tariffs against places like China, perhaps more than I would be against neighbours to America. But at the same time, you know, the issue, it seems to me anyway, for Trump is that he's weighing up the trade relationship also with other relationships. For example, the illegal migration that's happening over the border. And if the Mexicans have agreed to put 10,000 troops there to try and prevent that, then that's a plus, surely, for people in San Diego, not least, but also people in the rest of the country.
Yeah, it's interesting because this trade war is not entirely about trade. It is about larger issues such as the illegal flow of migrants, the flow of trafficking of illicit drugs, namely fentanyl, and of course Chinese power competition. I think in palaces and parliaments around the world, foreign leaders and their teams really need to think about the new power dynamic here in which binational relations are going to be a little more transactional, something that we saw throughout the first Trump administration as well. And they really need to be thinking about what the tangible benefits might be that they can bring to the negotiating table for each particular deal. It's certainly a departure from the way that things were done in the previous administration.
Right. I mean, it seems as well, because of, as you said earlier, the speed with which things are being handled and the executive orders that are being signed off, and that you know, all of the things that many people said he couldn't do that he is doing with some success, must be quite refreshing to an awful lot of people, given that, you know, in the last administration there wasn't an awful lot being done about anything really.
Well, one thing I'll point out is the recent memo around federal funds being frozen. That did cause a lot of panic, and ultimately, I mean, there are executive actions that can be taken, but the courts did strike that down as potentially unconstitutional, and a lot of states, 22 to be exact, did sue against that, and so they pulled back. So while there are certainly actions that can be taken with dizzying speed, there are also, the federal government is a massive institution, and things do move slower, and to have lasting change, you know, those things are going to require you know, the institutions to also be on board. But I know, you know, actions are being taken to try and to circumvent that a little bit as well.
Sure. And I think as well, we've seen this in a much smaller way here, you know, the business of the state is very unsubtle, isn't it? I mean, you know, what they should have done was to try and be a bit more clever about what they froze and what they didn't freeze, but I don't think there's many mechanisms by which you can do that. It's either, you know, pay everything or pay nothing, you know, and you kind of get trapped in the kind of mesmerizing administration of it all.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Good to talk to you, Lucas. Thank you very much indeed. Director of the World Trade Center in San Diego. I mean, it is breathtaking how quickly things are being done in the United States of America. As I said before, in terms of the protocols, in terms of the executive orders, in terms of the tariffs that everybody was moaning and groaning about only yesterday, Mexico have caved in, Canada have caved in, Panama have caved in, saying that they may well give up the Panama Canal. Colombia caved in on the sending back of the illegal aliens. Venezuela have caved in for the same reason as well. And let's have a look at the 27-year-old Caroline Leavitt, Leavitt, who is the White House press secretary, the brand new one, on why Elon Musk cancelled a load of international development money.
And here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look. Because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely brilliant. Fraud, waste and abuse. Get it out of our government. Get it out of our government as well. How about this from Paul? He says, it does matter about breaking COVID rules because Starmer and co were venomous and relentless on anything they could latch onto when the Tories were in charge. As for council tax, mine's gone up 4.99%. I know, what a nightmare. Great show, Mike, says Phil. Regarding Let's Be Clear, Keir, whatever he says, he cannot be trusted. He is a liar. And Mark in Selby. The next question, of course, is just who paid for the voice coach for Starmer? Answers on a postcard, please. Let's get a voice note from Bridget on those geniuses at GB Energy.
Good morning, Mike. Great show, as always. It's Bridget here from a frosty France, up watching you on my TV. I've just lit the wood burner in the house. I've just switched on my gas central heating to keep my bedroom warm. And later on, I might go out and I might do a bit of shopping in my petrol 4x4 because I'm the CEO, Mike, of B Energy, proper energy, and I don't get paid a big salary, but I'm all for Trump. Drill, baby, drill. That's us. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Bridget, you're a woman after my own heart. You live in France, you've got a wood-burning stove, you power your place by gas, you've got a petrol 4x4. Absolutely brilliant. You know, keep on keeping on. And don't forget, don't listen to those naysayers who say that green energy is the answer, because if it was, how would they have produced this bloke, Jurgern Meyer, who is apparently the energy boss of what's called, laughably, GB Energy? Have a look.
It will help bring energy prices down.
When?
Well, it's a matter for government and policy to decide.
But as the boss of this and as someone who is driving forward the ambition of the government, you surely have an idea in your head of when that central pledge to the people of reducing their bills by £300 will come into action.
It is not in the remit of Great British Energy to work out exactly how that energy costing gets through to the consumer.
What's he talking about? What does he do? I've said this before. I don't want to labour the point, but, you know, GB Energy is literally like a puff of smoke. There's nothing to it. There's no building, I don't believe. I don't think they've got any staff. I don't think they've got anything other than a listing in Companies House with this bloke Jurgen at the helm. I don't know what they do. I don't know who they answer to. I mean, nobody really knows what's going on here. They promised us when they came into power, didn't they, the Labour government, that GB Energy would be the answer to all of our problems about, you know, homegrown energy. This guy says he's going to have a job for life, effectively, and maybe in about 20 years or so, we might employ a bunch of people and maybe we'll make a few savings on energy. But meanwhile, my electricity bill and your electricity bill is the highest it's ever been. And the £300 we were promised before they came into power has completely evaporated, like, as they would say in a movie, I can't remember which movie, like a fart in the wind. It's literally disappeared. There's nothing. There's nothing there. You can dig around, you know, you could get a spade, you could get a drill even, you know, and try and dig into the ground to see what GB Energy is all about. There's nothing there. It's a mirage. I don't even think this guy Jurgen is real. I wonder if, is he a hologram, this guy? Does anybody actually seen him going anywhere? Does he exist? And what's happened to Ed Miliband, by the way? He's gone very quiet, hasn't he, since the old third runway was talked about. Now, there's more trouble at Mill because they're talking about drilling in the North Sea again. the Labour government, because you know what they want, don't you? We haven't heard it this week, but last week's word was growth. What's this week's word? Anyone? 7:38.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:40. I am Mike Graham, and of course we're here at the home of common sense all the way through until 10 o'clock. 4 glorious hours of what can only be described as the greatest breakfast show in the history of breakfast shows. We've got Catherine Porter to talk to now, independent energy analyst, because we thought we have to talk to her about this madness of what GB Energy actually is. Catherine, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I don't know if you managed to see the whole of this interview with Jurgern Meyer yesterday, but I mean, it was quite laughable, wasn't it? I mean, it's almost as though I've been describing it as though it's just a sort of a figment of somebody's imagination. They've just gone, let's create something out of nothing. But it doesn't, as far as I know, have a headquarters. It doesn't, as far as I know, have any employees. It has this guy Jurgern Meyer running it. But they don't do anything. They don't create any energy. They don't sell any energy. They don't wholesale it. They don't buy it. What are they for exactly?
Well, I mean, that's an excellent question. I think a lot of people before the election thought that they would be a supplier.
Right.
But if you looked in the sort of small print of the manifesto, that was never really on the cards. The few things that have been said about Great British Energy are that it will invest in community energy schemes, and that all the investments it makes should generate positive returns for taxpayers, which is a kind of a weird thing to say, because if these investments generate positive returns, then why do they need public money? They could raise their own money privately. So it's really very unclear what this is for, and I think it's more of a gimmick than anything else.
I think it's going to turn out to be this government's Millennium Dome, isn't it? I mean, I know that the O2 is now a very successful business and it runs like clockwork, and it's a great concert venue, but that's because it got taken over by private business, you know. But when they sort of decided to create the Millennium Dome, I think it was Peter Mandelson's idea. I remember going to it at a New Year of 1999. I was one of the lucky people to be invited. And you just thought, what? I don't even know what this is for. And they couldn't get anybody into it quickly enough, so we all practically missed New Year because of the security problem. And they've now created a similar Millennium Dome with GB Energy. Let's have a look at what he says about the jobs that they're going to create.
The northeast of Scotland will benefit from.
Great British Energy itself is going to create, over the next 5 years, 200 or 300 jobs in Aberdeen. That will be the size of our team. But look, that is...
They were promised 1,000.
Look, And I said, in the very long term, as we become a major energy champion, it may be many more than that.
What's the very long term?
Well, look, we grow these companies. Energy companies grow over 10, 20 years, and we're going to be around in 20 years as a British energy champion.
But you see, he talks about energy companies growing. You know, energy companies like BP are energy companies like Shell, energy companies like, you know, Amoco or whatever it is, Amoco. They're not an energy company, are they, GB Energy? They're an energy champion. That's what he calls it. I don't even know what that is.
No, exactly. And if you want to talk about jobs in the northeast of Scotland, then you're seeing a lot of jobs losses in the North Sea because of the extension of the energy profits levy, the narratives around restriction on new licenses. So obviously you had BP making announcements of significant job cuts, about 4,700 people across the country, 400 job losses expected at Grangemouth, and there were 2,500 jobs lost at Port Talbot last year.
Yeah.
So I know that's not in the northeast of Scotland, but that's over 7,500 jobs just across those three countries as a result of our very expensive energy.
Exactly right. And we've just seen a statistic, I think, this week talking about China upping its actual use of coal. You know, there are some people in the green business like Dale Vince who keep telling me that, oh, you know, China's changing over its energy commitments faster than anybody else in the world, and, you know, pretty soon they'll be actually more green than the rest of the rest of the world as well. Well, it doesn't sound like it to me. If they're using more and more coal, they're using, I think, twice as much coal as we've decommissioned in about 20 years.
That's right, and they're still building more. China's got a lot of demand growth, so they're building just about everything they can possibly build to try and meet that demand. But the interesting thing about energy prices is that the government keeps telling us that it's because of international gas prices.
Yeah.
But everybody that doesn't produce lots and lots of their own gas is exposed to those same international gas prices.
Yeah.
So why is it our electricity prices are some of the highest in the world? They are the highest industrial electricity prices and among the highest domestic electricity prices. So this whole narrative just doesn't stack up.
Right.
Everyone's facing the same gas prices, but we have the most expensive electricity prices.
Yeah.
And the reason actually is because of all the tariffs that get laid on for environmental subsidies.
Well, that would be a start. A lot of people also complain to me whenever they see their electricity bills going up. The standing charge keeps going up, and they're going, what is that even for? And I mean, is there any likelihood on the horizon in the future, the near future or the distant future, that electricity bills are going to come down in this country?
They will. I mean, it won't be in... Where are we now? We're in January. So they'll start coming down
February. No, we're in February now.
February, yes.
It's passed you by. We're February the 4th.
Yes, so we'd expect seasonal adjustments, although actually we've seen gas prices going up because gas consumption across Europe has been higher than it has been in the last few years, and that spooked the markets a little bit. But overall, we're getting new supply coming on stream, and so we will see gas prices coming down. There's a bit of upward pressure coming from increased demand. But Trump, for example, has been very clear that he wants to increase drilling, and there are other projects around the world as well coming on stream.
Yeah.
So that will push gas prices down. The trouble is electricity prices are inflated by all of these subsidies. And so it's difficult to see a pathway for electricity prices being cheap. If you look back before 2021, which is when prices started going up, you'll see there was a really big difference between the wholesale price of electricity and what we pay in our bills.
Right.
And that's all that other stuff that gets added.
Yes. It's a depressing thought. But anyway, we'll keep our fingers crossed that, you know, GB Energy, who, as far as I know, have only one employee, which is Jurgern Meyer. I don't think there's anybody else, is there?
Not as far as I know, but they haven't really been very transparent, so who can say?
I know. He must have an executive assistant, surely. I mean, it's just hilarious. Anyway, listen, Catherine, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Catherine Porter, independent energy analyst, giggling there because you have to do exactly that, don't you? It's absolutely ridiculous. Kev the Red says, Mike, is GB Energy the UK equivalent of the US Department for International Development, taking billions of pounds from the British taxpayer? Well, probably. Andy says, we won't put up council tax. I'm Del Starmer. My word is my bond. All right, Rodney? You plonker. Good morning, Mike, says Peter. The definition of Anglophobia, our current government. And a Squiddle woman says this. I think all these taxes Labour is screwing everyone over with are to pay for all these illegals he's allowing in. Well, you might be right. Let's get a voice note from Deborah on the voice coach.
Hi, Mike. Great show as usual. Just one thing. Keir Starmer. did break the COVID rules. Everyone's talking about it. However, what about the voice coach? She also broke the rules. Is she going to be investigated and arrested for breaking rules and breaking the law? Great show, Mike. Deborah from Essex.
Deborah from Essex, thank you very much indeed. Well, of course, as we saw, Keir Starmer didn't like being asked about it. He was asked about it yesterday by Jack Olsen from The Sun, and he went, have you broken any code rules? Of course not. And he just walks off, like Mr. Grumpy. You know, all right, mate, calm down. Rodney, don't worry, Mike, it sounds like Great British Energy is already producing energy in the form of hot air, a completely unlimited supply, says Nick. And Taunton Tim says, I will generate more wind power than GB Energy will produce over the next few years. Another total waste of my money, your money, and everyone listening. It's true. What is it for? Does anybody know anything about GB Energy? Have you seen them advertising for jobs or anything like that? According to old Jurgern, they're going to have a couple of hundred people working there in 5 years. Well, what are they going to be doing exactly? I mean, I don't know. Can we cross over live to GB Energy's headquarters yet, or is that too soon? Oh, after the break we're going to go there. We're going to check it out. We found where they're based. So coming up very shortly, we're going to cross live to the home headquarters of GB Energy, somewhere up in the north of Scotland. This is Talk.
When the road gets squeezed, the oil comes out and it helps to stop the bitumen from cracking and helps kind of keep it all together. So it might have some limited use when you're relaying roads, I think. You would have to be relaying roads completely or building new ones, and then it might make these roads a bit more durable. So I think it's great that we're trying to be innovative about these things.
Sure.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, and of course we are here all the way through until 10 o'clock. It is the home of common sense. It's the one place where you will hear exactly what is going on in this country, because we do not filter the news, we do not block it out, we do not try and persuade you that something that is happening is actually not happening. Here we go from Sonia, who says, why is this country's government obsessed with Islam? Rayner Reeves will learn the hard way the reality of their teachings where women are concerned. We must not allow our country to be dictated to by Anglophobic morons. Well, I've been asking you about that. Celia says, why self-defence isn't being taught in the schools is beyond me. We all need some serious self-defence. Well, we had another terrible incident in school yesterday in Sheffield. A 15-year-old boy knifed to death in an attack, which apparently, according to one of the papers this morning reporting it, says there was a row over messaging in some way between pupils at this particular school, All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield. Paramedics pronounced the Year 11 pupil dead at the scene, and a 15-year-old has also been charged with this murder as well. James, has been arrested, not charged. I take that back. James Riley's here, former probation officer and founder of Get Away and Get Safe, who runs courses nationally, I'm assuming, to try and safeguard a lot of our children in these schools. James, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Horrible story, this, but tragically, one that we hear happening really far too often.
Yeah, I believe this was the fourth murder of a child in 2025.
Yeah.
When I heard the news yesterday, it's sad to say, but I wasn't even shocked.
No. I mean, that's the trouble, isn't it? We become kind of inured to it. Tell us a bit about what you do with your courses.
So for the last 9 years, I've been going around schools all over the country just to educate young people about the dangers of going down the wrong path, really.
Yeah.
But a lot of it covers youth crime, knife crime, gun crime. But my programme is not about it, but I'm not there to scare any young people. It's about trying to educate them to stay on the right path and make some really important choices in life.
Sure. Do you find that more kids now are coming to school with knives or with some kind of weapon?
I'm not sure. In all the schools in the last 9 years that I've been going around schools, head teachers are indicating to me that there are concerns that young people are bringing weapons to school. I'm obviously of a different generation to the young people I'm working with. Has it been going on since I went to school? Probably. But this case yesterday, a murder in the safety of school, that's one of the places we perceive to be safe, is in the school and at home, or we'd like to be safe. And there's probably parents up and down the country who've woke up this morning seeing the news, hearing the news, thinking, is my son or daughter going to be safe in school today? And what a horrible thought when you're going to work and letting I'm a father and letting your kids go to school.
Sure. No, totally. I mean, my own kids are older now, and they've left school a couple of years ago. But even just 3 or 4 years ago, and they went to school in a pretty, normally what you might describe as rural kind of town, not particularly industrialised, not particularly mixed up, not particularly working class, middle class, whatever. And even they were telling me that they knew friends of theirs, kids who were coming to school with knives. And I was like, really? Why? And they said, well, it's just a thing that seems to have happened in the last few years.
Yeah, it's extremely worrying. But the question is, why would someone go to school with a weapon? Kids get up in the morning, jump in the shower, brush their teeth, eat the breakfast, put the uniform on. At what stage in that process is someone thinking, well, I need to now go and pick up a knife and bring it to school, or any type of weapon? It doesn't have to be a knife, any type of weapon. It's difficult to understand. And I heard Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, an interview last night, and he said the government's going to take some action. I just think words are cheap sometimes. It's easy to say the government is going to take some action. I'd like to hear someone expand on what that action is. Consider the cuts to youth services, cuts in funding to third sector organisations like mine, who are doing our best, and we are at the coalface. I'm currently running a programme.
But I always wonder whether it's about funding. I always wonder whether there's something that's changed in society. I went to school probably a lot longer ago than you did, but I've never dreamed of taking a knife to school. I've never dreamed of, and we used to get in fights in the playground and stuff like that, but nobody was going to pull a knife on you. It just didn't happen. And you think to yourself, well, how is this How have we got from there to here in, you know, the 40-odd years or whatever it is that that has passed in between? I mean, I lived in America for a while, and in New York, when I lived there in the 80s, it was pretty violent. And they had schools there, secondary schools, where they'd be walking through a security arch to get into school in the mornings. I mean, you think we're going to end up having to go down that road?
Well, it looks like that's the avenue that we're on, but to think that your kids are going to school and they're being searched on the way in, you know, for weapons, through, I don't know, a metal detector. But if we have a real conversation about that, all that'll happen is someone will go into school, they'll realise there's a metal detector, or they're going to get searched, there's going to be a wand. It's a simple text message to the mates, look, you're getting wanded, if anyone's got anything, give them the heads up, and then you know, someone discards the weapon outside school.
Leave it in a hedge or something.
It's all well and good saying, let's search the kids, but, you know, they've all got a phone. It's one simple text message, we're going to get searched.
Yeah.
And that, I'm not just talking about weapons, it could be vapes or whatever they shouldn't have. And kids will just discard them. It's simple.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd have the deterrent effect.
Yeah, you're probably right. Listen, James, good to talk to you. We haven't got a lot of time this morning, I'm afraid, but we'll come back to you, I'm sure, and talk to you some more, because I think there's more to be discussed here. Because I think it's more important, really, to find out why so many kids are now wanting to stab each other, wanting to plunge a knife into another person's flesh. I mean, it doesn't really bear thinking about, does it? 14, 15-year-old children. It's not right. This is Morning Glory. We've got much more to do. Ryan Saby from The Sun coming up next.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. The shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in on the far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are the missiles that Biden has approved for the...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham. The sun is up. There was no great sunrise this morning, I'm afraid. Yesterday was very spectacular. We talked about it for quite some time throughout the course of the day. However, today, not so much, because Keir Starmer's back from Brussels. That's probably why. He's probably completely put a dampener on everything, having said and plighted his troth to NATO. I don't know what he said at the dinner for the EU leaders last night, but he is apparently back in London now, and no doubt will be addressing us all with great alacrity at Prime Minister's questions tomorrow. Let's hope that at some point somebody, possibly Kemi Badenoch, will ask him about the voice coach, because an awful lot of you are saying, for heaven's sake, what on earth was going on? Who, in their right mind, on a Christmas Eve during lockdown, would travel from Brighton to London to see Keir Starmer to teach him how to speak? It doesn't really add up, does it? Only Keir Starmer, of course, would think of having somebody who is a voice coach come to see him to teach him how to speak wearing a mask on Christmas Eve. There's more to this than meets the eye, I think, is what we're saying. 0344 499 1000. The other big story we've got going on today is GB Energy. There's a bloke called Jurgern Meyer, who appears to be the boss of GB Energy, and he doesn't appear to have any employees, doesn't appear to have any kind of office facilities. We are going to cross live. We've managed to find what we think is their offices. We'll be crossing live to those very shortly. We're going to try and get a reporter up there as soon as we can. Perry says this: that's some career change for Jurgen, from Liverpool manager to head of GB Energy. And he goes, oh no, it's the wrong Jurgen. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Good morning, Mike. Darren from Carmarthen. Just regarding GB Energy, Mike, I've actually been offered a job there this morning. Well, I say a job. I've been appointed, Mike, as the Director of Finance, the head team maker, the cleaner, the caretaker, Mike, the Chief Executive, and the Director of Operations, Mike. So it's only me and Jurgen at the moment, so the office is pretty quiet, but we're hoping to get some more people on board soon.
Brilliant. Darren, I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, what's going on? GB Energy doesn't do anything, doesn't make anything, doesn't sell anything, doesn't buy anything, doesn't have an office. But they're paying this bloke 6 figures. We are, by the way. How about this from Keith in Oswald Street? He says, I suffer from Starmophobia. Is there a cure? I don't know. Andrew says, if Starmer had an essential voice coach, I can only conclude that at the same time Rachel must have had a private tutor to teach her sums. Yeah, he was there as well. Yeah, it was a great big party on Christmas Eve. All right, Rach, here's an abacus for you. Climbing. 0344 499 1000. Ryan Sabi's here, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. We'll find out from him what Starmer's up to today. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. A couple of big stories to talk about this morning. Basically, Angela Rayner is going to set rules on Islamophobia and free speech. Labour apparently dropped a plan to ban foreign donors because Lord Ali told them to. Huh? I mean, he's not a foreign donor, he's a homegrown donor. We haven't heard much from Lord Ali lately, have we? Also, council tax rises. You know, this is after Keir Starmer. We should play this, actually, if we haven't done it yet. This is what Keir Starmer said before the election on council tax. Have a look.
We need to be clear about council tax. Labour would freeze council tax next year using that windfall tax that hasn't been collected. Yes, you heard it right. Not a penny more on your council tax. Not a penny more than the bill you paid last year.
Not a penny more. You heard it right. Oh, actually, no, we didn't hear it right. You did say it, but actually we heard it wrong, because what you meant to say was, actually, we're going to put council tax up by some form or another of 10%, possibly even more than that. Windsor's got away with it. They wanted 25% of a pay rise, of a council tax rise, so it's gone down to 10%. So it's all a pretty bad scene, really, for Labour. Keir Starmer was in NATO headquarters yesterday in Brussels. He was talking to EU leaders last night. We'll find out from Ryan Sabi in a moment exactly what is going on with our relationship with the European Union and Brexit. But first of all, let us go, because we've spent some time on this. GB Energy's headquarters have been located by the good burgers of talkTV, and we now can cross live, I think, to our reporter there. Where is he? There it is, the world headquarters of GB Energy. Jurgen! He hasn't got in yet. Jurgen will be there any minute. It's a water cabin. There seems to be some kind of shipyard behind it. Goodness gracious me. Yeah, it's a bit cold in Aberdeen this time of year, so I don't blame Jurgen for not hanging around up there. Anyway, let's go back to Ryan Saby, who's here, Deputy Police Editor of The Sun in London. Ryan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I'm very sorry to say that we've done a bit of an investigation into GB Energy and there doesn't seem to be much to it. You know, Jurgern Meyer yesterday talking about the jobs that we're going to be created in about sort of 20 years' time. And talking about the bills that we're going to come down, but he doesn't know when because it's not up to him. I mean, does anybody know anything about GB Energy? They don't appear to have much of a structure of any kind. He seems to be the only bloke that works for them.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, this was launched with a big fanfare last year. Right. It was part of the Labour manifesto, and it's meant to attract private investment, but it's quite confusing for the public. This is a company called GB Energy, but doesn't actually produce any energy, and it won't do so. But it's going to try and sort of facilitate the sort of move to clean energy and decarbonisation by 2030. But right. Jurgern Meyer, intriguingly yesterday, saying that he spoke to a select committee comment in the House of Commons late last year, saying that it will create 1,000 jobs. Yeah. And when pushed on that yesterday, he said it could take up to 20 years. Right. Now, this is meant to be one of these big flagship policies of this government. So you just wonder, does the left hand and the right hand know what they're doing on this?
Well, I'm beginning to see a pattern emerging here with this government. They keep, everything they're now getting asked about, they keep saying, oh, it won't be happening in this parliament, it'll be happening in the next parliament, almost as if they're sort of wishing themselves into a second term that they hope they'll get from 2029 on. Almost as though, oh, don't expect anything to change this quickly, you know, because it has been such a mess for 14 years. But let's have a look at what he actually said about the jobs front.
The northeast of Scotland will benefit from.
Great British Energy itself is going to create, over the next 5 years, 200 or 300 jobs in Aberdeen. That will be the size of our team. But look, that is...
They were promised 1,000.
Look, and I said, in the very long term, as we become a major energy champion, it may be many more than that.
What's the very long term?
Well, look, we grow these companies. Energy companies grow over 10, 20 years, and we're going to be around in 20 years as a British energy champion.
Yeah, a British energy champion, he now says they are. They're not actually a British energy company. What exactly does that mean?
There's a GB Energy was set up to try and sort of facilitate that big move to decarbonisation, the route to net zero. So GB Energy is this sort of kind of nebulous kind of energy producer that will bring in extra money and try and actually get other companies and bring in private investment to actually make sure we get to 2030 or 2050 with a net zero targets. However, if the infrastructure at GB Energy isn't really set up, it does question whether you're actually going to reach those other targets.
Well, it's not. I mean, you just said energy produce. It's not going to produce any energy. You know, it's not going to buy any energy. It's not going to sell any. It's basically a quango, isn't it? They might as well just call it, you know, the GB Energy quango.
That's exactly what it is. It's it's a state-owned company. It's a quango, and we've seen what's happened to quangos up and down the land over past decades, and you just wonder whether it doesn't start producing results, it will get rebranded, it will get renamed, and they'll have a shake-up there. But I think it surprised a lot of people yesterday when this is one of your big 4 or 5 pledges, and it doesn't seem like you've got all your ducks in a row on this.
No, absolutely ridiculous. Let's talk about Keir Starmer. He was over in Brussels yesterday, and your colleague Jack Elsom rather upset him. I don't know whether he's going to be off the Christmas card list or he's not going to be invited round for the next Christmas Eve jamboree. But he was asked, of course, about the voice coach situation because it would appear that despite what Downing Street says and despite what Labour says and despite what Starmer says, there's not quite all that meets the eye, shall we say, does not appear to be what it maybe really is. Let's have a look at Starmer, a bit rattled yesterday.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key word?
Years. I mean, he's not very good at denying things, is he? He gets very tetchy.
Yeah, no, that press conference he held there in Brussels yesterday was extremely short. There was only 3 questions. It was up to, as you say, my colleague Jack Elsom to shout at him as he was walking out. And Sir Keir says that all rules were followed, but it does beg questions why a voice coach travelled from, we think, her home in Brighton up to London on Christmas Eve 2020 when Britain was in, one of the most stringent sort of lockdown regulations of all. There's that special sort of Christmas period where you're only allowed to mix with certain bubbles. And also, there was also a line in the book by my sort of colleagues, Gabriel Pogrund and Patrick Maguire, who work at Westminster as well, saying that she was afforded key worker status. Now, it does seem very odd that a voice coach can be deemed key worker. And I think when we get the chance to press Keir Starmer on that again, it will be interesting to see who actually gave her that key worker status. And it does seem strange that she was travelling between tiers, and also who actually gave her that sort of job description.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not 2-tier Keir anymore, is it? It's 4-tier Keir now, because they were in tier 4, apparently. And I've just been, my attention has been drawn by somebody on Twitter. I've just checked it out on Leonie Mellinger's personal and business impact coaching website. At the very top of it, there's a quote: "Thanks for all your help and support along the way, which made all this possible." And the author of the quote, Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, there we go. Yeah, they does show they had, and I think they've known each other for quite a few years. And I think he also knows that the husband. There was a story around yesterday that there's an organisation that the family run, and Sir Keir Starmer had close ties to that.
Oh yeah, but didn't he organise some fundraising for them or something?
There was a fundraising.
I mean, it's
event
all a bit incestuous, this whole Labour government. The way that they operate, they seem to. It's all about mates, isn't it? You've got old what's his face, the Attorney General, Lord Herman, whatever his name is, Harmer. You've got Tulip Sadiq, who clung on for so long that she's practically about to be extradited to Bangladesh for in questions about corruption. He's got Lord Ali, he had Sue Gray, now he's got this woman. There's no end to the kind of cronyism. This is a guy who said he was going to put an end to cronyism, who seems to be governing with cronyism only.
And I think the big problem for Keir and the sort of questions that he'll have to answer is that he was sort of seen as Mr. Rules. We remember him during the whole sort of Partygate situation with Boris Johnson, as he should have done as leader of the opposition, probing the Prime Minister on that. But when the tables are turned, he's going to have to answer as many questions. And I feel that some people might say, is there the appetite for this 5 years on? But there are certainly questions to answer. Everyone else seems to live by the rules of that time, and why didn't Sir Keir? Downing Street very, very, very keen to say all rules were followed, as you heard Sir Keir saying that at the press conference yesterday. But it does raise questions.
It really does. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a massive, massive problem in a way. Not because of what the actuality of what it was, unless there's some deep, dark secret that we don't know about, but the fact that he was so vociferous about Tories breaking the rules. And because he said, after Beergate, that basically if it was found that he had broken the rules and if he was given a fixed penalty notice, he said he would resign.
Yeah, no, totally. He was absolutely adamant on that, and that's why we've seen the Conservatives out over the last couple of days saying, look, let's just have an independent investigator come in, establish the facts, and then perhaps everyone can move on. But it doesn't seem like there's any appetite from government or the Labour Party for going down that route. We will just have to keep pressing Downing Street, and I'm sure Kemi Badenoch, as you mentioned earlier, will be pressing the Prime Minister when it comes to their common showdown tomorrow.
Well, this is it. I mean, presumably Kemi Badenoch will go for the jugular on this one, won't she?
You would have thought so. But what I have noticed over the past few weeks, she's been going down the route of very sort of technical questions on, whatever issue it may well be on education, school academies, and sort of very focusing on sort of a policy-driven questions and using up all her 6 questions on that, which she has done for the past couple of weeks. So it'll be interesting to see whether she tries to make capital out of this, or whether she goes down a topic. The only trouble is, as soon as she starts mentioning about COVID rules, Sakir is just going to open his folder and he'll have an absolute stack of facts and figures that will just throw back in the face of the Conservatives about Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak breaking lockdown rules with that piece of cake which they had during Boris Johnson's birthday party in Downing Street. That is the problem for Kemi Badenoch if she does try and raise it.
Yeah, but that's all about, how clever you are about doing it, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, if she's going to shy away from these things because she's worried about what might come back the other way, then she's not in the right job, is she?
No, exactly. I think if her advisors will be saying they'll be working out what line they're going to be going down. Will they be looking at the other issue is whether she looks at the closer ties to the European Union. She accusing Sakir of cozying up to Brussels rather than looking towards America. So they'll have to sort of game this today and tomorrow, just working out how they can secure a victory over Sakir. Is it over the EU and closer ties with Trump, or on the other hand, is it trying to sort of elicit an answer and get Sakir Starmer on the record talking about this potential breach of COVID rules?
Yeah, absolutely right. Interesting times. We'll watch all that tomorrow with some interest. Ryan, thank you very much indeed. Ryan Saby, definitely political editor at The Sun. Many of you have got plenty to say about all of this, of course, and particularly about GB Energy. Gary says this: I'm certain that GB Energy will eventually create those 200 jobs that Jurgern Meyer has promised. They will all be diversity, equality and inclusion officers on six-figure salaries working from home. And one here from someone who doesn't give a name. British Energy don't need a headquarters. Their employees will be working from home on the Costa del Sol in Ibiza, doing Zoom meetings 3 days a week. Makes sense. No need to heat a load of offices in the UK. Excellent show, as usual. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get a voice note from Chris.
Good morning, Mike. Chris from Barnsley. Brilliant. Mike Graham in the ears and the sun rising a bit earlier. Makes for a very, very happy start to February. I'm voice chatting in, Mike, 'cause I'm confused about this BG Energy. I just cannot get my head around it at all. What is it? Where's he pulling his salary from? I'm just absolutely baffled by it. I think Homer Simpson had more of an idea what his business was when he started, because this BG Energy, I don't know what it is, and how's it going to help anybody?
It's true. BG Energy, what is it? Alan in Middlesbrough says this: on the subject of GB Energy being nothing but a Labour white elephant, there is no website apart from a mission statement on a gov.uk page. Like everything associated with this Labour government, it's just a lot of smoke and mirrors and the kind of organisation you wouldn't buy a second-hand car from. It's true, isn't it? Do they really think we're this stupid? We're now, 8 months practically into this new Labour government, and it's so low, so you cannot really call it new anymore. They announced this thing with great alacrity, great flurry of publicity, right? GB Energy, it's going to be the future. We're going to get your energy bills down by 300 quid. How soon? Well, 300 quid a year, something like that. Really? Really? Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'll look forward to that. But how is that going to happen? Well, it might not be 300 quid a year. It might be 300 quid over 5 years. Right, OK, well, how will that happen? Well, problem is, it's very, very difficult to cap energy, even though we said we would. Actually, probably won't be 300 quid over 5 years at all. In fact, it's going to go up 300 quid. All right, OK then. What about GB Energy? Yeah, well, we've created this amazing company which is going to transform the way that we produce energy. Really? How are you going to produce the energy? We're not. We don't produce any energy at GB Energy, no. Have you got an office? No. Have you got a website? No. Have you got any workers? No. Have you got any vans? No. Any accounts people? No. Anybody in HR? No. Have you got anybody working on sales? No. Have you got anybody, answering phones? No. Have you actually got a phone number? No. We got this bloke Jurgen with a funny haircut, who some people are saying reminds us of another Austrian who had a funny haircut. Crikey. Who knows where it's going to go? 22 minutes past 8.
I'm quite happy for there to be a sort of an open appeal, so that we need to put this to rest.
Yeah.
But do you think there's an element where actually some people will never be satisfied?
I think people that occasionally convince themselves of something. I do wonder if they would be quite so irate, and this is going to sound very harsh, if Lucy Letby looked different.
I've always thought this. She just looks lovely, nice girl.
Yes,
Doesn't
she
look
was
like
called
she
Nice Lucy. They referred to as Nice Lucy at some point in the papers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:25 already. Where is the time going? I can't imagine. Andy from Notts says this: GB Energy must surely have at least one other employee, a deputy for Jurgern. Without a deputy, who would they get to sack when things go wrong? And here's one from from Jay. Sorry, he says, Mike, I know how GB Energy get their energy. They bought up stacks of baked beans, eat them, and have plenty of jars. It seems these people just spend their time thinking up rubbish to make billions, and then laugh and say, "Oh, the plebs are gullible and thick." Well, true. And James in commentary, don't you think it's funny how all of Labour's pledges, i.e. GB Energy, come into fruition in 5 to 10 years' time when they won't be in power anymore? Well, I'll tell you what, let's talk to Ross Clark, a man who knows a thing or two about the energy business. Wrote a book, of course, about net zero. We're going to talk to him about Europe in a second, but he's, of course, got a column in The Sun this morning on page 10, page 12, I should say. Very good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Mike.
Just before we get on to the subject of the Brussels trip by Sir Keir Starmer and him cozying up to European leaders, I just thought I'd ask you a quick question about GB Energy, because we've been watching all morning this interview that Jurgern Meyer did yesterday with Sky, in which he basically confessed that they don't have a plan to create any jobs at all at the moment, but hopefully in 5 years they might have a couple of hundred, not the 1,000 that he promised. And as far as the £300 saving on your energy bill is concerned, he's got no idea, because that's not in his remit, apparently.
No, well, it's all rather falling apart, isn't it? Well, I mean, Ed Miliband's promised to save us £300 a year on our energy bills. That is going to be a real millstone around the whole government's neck, because it's quite clear he has no idea how this saving is going to be achieved, and quite the opposite. The trying to decarbonise the electricity grid by 2030 is going to hugely increase energy bills, because it's going to require billions of pounds of investment, and it's going to require the government to run two parallel sort of energy systems, wind and solar for when the sun's shining, the wind's blowing, and then we're going to have all this gas backup. As many gas power stations as we have now are going to be kept in backup, in reserve, on standby, in case, for when the sun goes in. I mean, it's completely ridiculously expensive way to run an energy system. And I mean, Britain's already one of the countries in the world which generates one of the highest proportions of its electricity from wind and solar already. So if wind and solar energy was going to save us money, it would already be saving us money. But instead, we've got the highest energy prices in the world. So something doesn't quite add up. And the idea that you can sort of get an even better deal for taxpayers and energy consumers by nationalising the whole thing is completely ridiculous. I mean, wind and solar companies are now sort of, a bit on their uppers, because the cost of constructing wind and solar farms has increased quite dramatically in recent years. They're not making good profits on it. And
but they don't have to worry about that, because we just give them the money to build them, don't we?
Well, the idea that the sort of nationalised version of the industry can do better is completely bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely right. Which also brings us back to Keir Starmer in your column this morning in The Sun on page 12. Entangle ourselves in the EU again. No merci, Mr. Macron. You know, Emmanuel Macron has got some stones, it has to be said, and some chutzpah to bother actually telling anybody that anything has failed other than his own government. You know, the idea that he's, pulled Keir Starmer aside and said, Brexit has failed, it's time to do a new deal. I don't know what happened last night at the dinner, but most of the trip seemed to focus around, sort of security and defence. He went to NATO, gave a very boring press conference, and then he got very tetchy with a Sun journalist about whether he broke COVID rules with his voice coach. But any idea what sort of cosy deal he did last night over dinner in the French or in the Brussels capital?
No, well, what he went to do there is, as you say, discuss defence and security pact with the EU, particularly in light of what's happening in Ukraine. Donald Trump has sort of indicated he might want to settle the Ukraine war and allow Putin possibly to walk off with some kind of victory. And Keir Starmer's very worried about that, and wants a rational response from the EU as a whole, so a coordinated response. So he wants to cooperate with the EU in that sphere. But Macron seemed to get it into his head that Starmer was coming to Brussels with his tail wagging between his legs and begging to be sort of let back into the EU in some sort of form. It's not hard really to see why the EU should be at the moment trying to entice Britain into some kind of customs union.
Yeah.
Because, across the Atlantic, we've got Donald Trump is threatening Mexico, Canada, China with tariffs. He's threatening Britain and the EU with tariffs. But what he has said is that Britain, he feels he can do a deal with Britain to avert the punitive tariffs, but he doesn't feel he can do a deal with the EU. And where would that leave Britain? In this sort of privileged position of possibly being able to trade virtually fairly freely with both the US and the EU. And so, what the EU wants to do is try to trap Britain in the EU customs union so that we wouldn't be able to do any kind of deal with the US.
Right. So, I mean, all in all, it was a bit of a wasted trip, really, wasn't it? I mean, as everybody kind of looks towards the US, because it's the place where everything seems to be happening at the moment, the long-threatened, tariff destruction of the world didn't really happen. In fact, quite the reverse. Mexico agreed to put more troops on the border, which is what Trump wanted. So he's delayed the tariffs for a month. The Canadians are starting to buckle under as well. The markets were a bit wobbly, but the markets will see any kind of change in anything as an opportunity to make money one way or the other. He seems to be looking in the wrong direction, it seems to me, Mr. Starmer.
Well, yes, Trump sort of uses these sort of tariffs as a sort of, outrageous opening position in negotiations, and I don't think he really wants permanent tariffs against Mexico, Canada, and so on. He wants something out the deal, and
right.
The EU has been a master in what we call non-tariff barriers, and this sort of spurious bans on chlorinated chicken and the like, which are sort of dressed up as health and safety messages.
Yeah.
Things, but are really there to protect French farmers and the like. So that's what's going on with trade. But the EU. You look at the US. It's far more open trade. If you look at US tariffs, they're far lower than almost every country in the world. The US believes in free trade in a way that the EU doesn't believe in free trade. And it's not surprising that Trump should want to sort of put this right and get rid of these sort of non-tariff barriers.
Yeah, exactly right. It's going to be an interesting few weeks and months, it seems to me, because he's called the EU atrocious and way out of line when it comes to the trade deficit that he's got with them. $350 billion, I think he said it was. They don't buy any of our stuff, but we buy plenty of their stuff. So we'll see how it all goes. And I mean, I wonder whether we'll see Keir Starmer going over to Washington anytime soon, because so far he doesn't appear to be getting an invitation.
No. Traditionally, US presidents have sort of invited, met up with British prime ministers, among their first visits. But this occasion, Trump seems to have a distinctly cooler attitude towards Starmer. Now, Starmer's got to choose, really. He said, of course, we want to trade with everybody, but he's really being forced into a position where he's going to side either with the EU or with the US, or certainly to avoid siding with the EU. And I think, to be fair to him at the moment, he has shown no sign of falling for the EU's ruse and sort of accepting any invitation to rejoin the EU customs union. I mean, Yvette Cooper too made that clear yesterday morning. So yeah, I mean, at the moment, it seems that the government is quite resistant to the idea of being drawn back into the tentacles of the EU and having to obey all their regulations and so on. But we've got to remember the Labour Party was pretty heavily Remain, and Starmer himself was a great advocate of a second referendum trying to thwart it. So
for a long time as well.
I don't feel we can necessarily trust Starmer not to fall for the EU's overtures and sort of end up getting Britain trapped back in the sort of EU sphere of influence.
No, absolutely right. Ross, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Ross Clark's column in The Sun today on page 12. The front page of The Sun, by the way, goes with Princess of Wales this morning. She's posing in Windsor Woods for a picture released to mark World Cancer Day, taken by her 6-year-old son, Louis. Mum of 3, Kate, announced last month that she was in remission. Say trees, mummy, it says the headline. It was rather good. You can get The Sun, of course, where you normally would get every single newspaper. Jill has got a voice note for us on the voice coach.
Morning, Mike. Jill from Northampton. Love the show. Can you imagine if something had surfaced about Nigel or any of the Reform MPs bending the COVID rules? Not that any of them need a voice coach. Labour would be going to town on it, yet Keir wants to just brush it under the carpet and gets angry. I mean, his responses to when he's asked something he doesn't like, it's like his way or the highway, isn't it, all the time. And now the shoe's on the other foot, and they just don't like it. However, it does give us wonderful fodder for much hilarity, and I've been in stitches this week, so thank you.
Jill, no problem at all. I mean, it's nothing that I can do, really. It's all they're doing. I mean, I'm just laughing at them. They're the comedy act. The government. Absolutely ridiculous. GB Energy was set up as a fig leaf to cover the decimation of the fossil fuel industry and jobs in Aberdeen, says Lavra. And Johnny Rugby says, morning, Mike. GB Energy, what a crock of BS. My fuel bill has just been increased by 84%. Time to send out an SOS. Sod off Starmer. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a new study by Policy Exchange. Every demographic group in this country wants the police to be tougher on crime. And we'll be talking as well about the story in Nottingham, where the NHS are refusing to reveal details of Valdo Calicane's schizophrenia because apparently they owe him a duty of privacy as a patient in the NHS. I mean, give me a small break. We'll talk about that next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:40. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory every single weekday morning from 6 a.m. sharp. If you can get there at 6, brilliant. If you can't get there till 7, don't worry. You might have missed an hour, but you'll still be able to catch up with most of the hilarity that we get ourselves involved in. Right now, though, we're going to have a very serious conversation with Harry Tanguy because Policy Exchange, the think tank, have come out with a study in which they found that every demographic group wants the police to be tougher on crime, and it's the Reform Party who are currently leading now in the most recent poll that was done for YouGov, presenting the most serious electoral risk to the Labour government on law and order, because they're talking a very good game about law and order. It remains to be seen whether they would do that in power, because they're not in power yet. But certainly, you know, tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime is an old Blairite message. Let's see what Harry makes of it all. Harry, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. How are you, Mike?
Yeah, good, very well. I don't think it comes as any great surprise, really, that people want the police to do a better job on law and order around the country. I mean, we've had some terrible headlines just over the last couple of days. You know, another 15-year-old stabbed to death in a school in Sheffield. We got this morning the NHS apparently, according to the Times, withholding reports on the Nottingham killer, Valdo Calocane, because it might be an invasion of his privacy, and the victims' families are absolutely up in arms about it.
Yes, and this stops any advance in dealing with crime, is this thing called lawyers and the Human Rights Act. And I think more and more, even when I was in the police 4 years ago, it was known as the Criminal Rights Act. It was nothing to do with the good, honest citizen paying their tax and minding their own business. Of course, in the past and up to the present, most of these good, honest citizens are avoiding being victims, but of course more of us, day after day, are becoming victims, and crime is getting closer and closer to home. We've also been lectured, of course, that the important things is the DEI and that side of things, and that we mustn't stop search the wrong person. Right. You know, the wrong person you'd have thought would be the person innocently going about their business, and not targeted stop search where it's necessary. Because contrary to what some people believe, police officers aren't generally stupid, and they're not going to waste their time sticking their hands in dirty pockets or pockets that may contain needles and things for no particular reason at all. So this is what we've been lectured with, and unfortunately it's becoming such a reality now that criminals are laughing in our faces, that everyone who is honest and pays their taxes is getting rather upset about it.
Well, quite, because I think you're right to say it, and people are noticing it more, aren't they? I mean, I was speaking to a cab driver yesterday who was telling me that there are certain parts of London that he is very well aware of where there are, you know, active sort of phone stealing gangs operating, and they don't really even bother moving from the location they're in, because they know it's an area where there's plenty of people coming every single day, and they'll get a pretty good haul of phones, and 1,000 phones a week now being stolen in London. The shoplifting epidemic is out of all proportion. Nobody knows what to do about that, you know, and people are stealing things in front of practically, you know, any member of the police or the authorities without a care in the world, because they know they won't probably get caught.
And the common denominator here is leadership. Yeah. And I don't see much leadership from the government, where he's desperately just trying to find his character, let alone actually leadership, in order to empower those in the police to sort of put their political views behind and actually do some policing. And sort of it started to crumble, I think, with the PCCs, the Police and Crime Commissioners, which became political. And so the police more and more couldn't step aside and say, look, you get on with your politics. We're going to actually prevent crime. Yeah. And we're going to be seen to be dealing with crime. But so many police officers, I tell you now, more and more, if you're proactive as a police officer, and there were police officers that used to hide behind the desk as much as they can, and there were those who used to get out on the street, each is important, but some people do nothing behind the desk either, then you will be suspended at some point and investigated, because someone's made an allegation, and we look into this, and that is where the problem. So we've clipped the wings of our police officers. We've sort of given shoplifting limits of which we're going to allow. Shops don't bother anymore. Every crime reported can take thousands of hours to investigate, with no exaggeration. It's a mess, and it needs strong leadership and for people to brush off the criticism because somebody's being dealt with a little bit harshly. Remember the scooter robberies that were occurring in London?
Yeah.
How did that stop? We started knocking them off their bikes.
Right.
Let's do a little bit more of that.
Yes.
And doing some tough policing. And then you'll find the majority, who are usually silent, will be cheering all the way.
Well, we're seeing it with Trump and his administration now in the United States of America. You know, people are actually going back across the border the other way because they've worked out that if they do come to the US illegally now, they're going to be deported and they might not be treated terribly well. So guess what? You know, the numbers have gone down by 95%, you know, in a week. It's not hard. It's not rocket science, is it?
No, and it comes down to that zero tolerance, you know, such as New York. Remember those days when every broken window, I walk by and in Cornwall and there's a bit of graffiti and they're actually covering it up very quickly. So there's no point in putting your graffiti there because you've wasted your time after one night. Nobody sees it. This is the crucial thing. And even though it may take more resources initially, the crime becomes unacceptable. But when people realise there are no repercussions, nothing's going to happen. So why not? Especially when things are a little bit tough. And then you start believing the world owes you a living, which can often be the case because your complaint system bows down to you. And victimhood is the currency of this decade, unfortunately. Things have got to change, and the only way it will change is leadership. And I think Trump has shown us that, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think he has, absolutely right. Harry, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. We haven't got a lot of time this morning, so I'm going to cut it short. Harry Tanguy, former police sergeant there, of course. How about this from Kevin in Stafford? He says, if I want to set fire to a Bible, a Quran, or a Haynes repair manual for a 1968 Cortina 1600, that's my choice. So am I Anglophobic, Islamophobic, or Fordophobic? Well, Kevin, who knows? Maybe all three. Probably that's what Keir Starmer would say, and he'd lock you up for being a far-right bigot. This is, of course, the Independent... No, it's not the Independent Republic of Mike Graham, it's Morning Glory. But we've got a voice note from Nigel on GB Energy.
Good morning, Mike. I've just had a phone call from GB Energy. They've asked if I will be the vanity photographer for their head. However, they can't give me an office address, they can't give me a location, and they don't know what they want me to photograph. Have a lovely day. It's all hot air to me.
It is, absolutely. Nobody knows what GB Energy is all about. Can anybody tell me? Anyone out there? 0344 499 1000 is the number. Coming up, we're going to talk about fat jabs and why you can't get them quite so easily as you used to at the pharmacy.
Decision after decision was just so unconservative, in my opinion. And I'd seen the rot start a number of years before, with the Conservative Party when they set something up called a A-list in the selection of candidates. And I do blame the selection of candidates a lot for what's happened in the Conservative Party, because if you look at the number of MPs that make up Parliament now, I would say that two-thirds of them are probably what I would describe probably more of a Liberal Democrat or Social Democratic Party bent.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Julian Hartley-Brewer will be here then. We've got some great messages coming in on GB Energy and much else besides. Knives in schools as well after that terrible tragedy yesterday. A 15-year-old boy stabbed to death, unfortunately, in a school in Sheffield. Let's get a voice note from Liam on GB Energy.
Morning, Mike. Liam from Kent here. The more I hear Keir Starmer, the more I seem to think that I need to be absolutely clear that GB Energy will always be the future. Anyway, have a great show, Mike. If you'd like a GB Energy sticker or a T-shirt, I'll have someone send you them. Thank you.
Liam, thank you very much indeed. And it's all the rage, isn't it, doing all these Starmer impressions with his voice coach. What's it all about, though? Absolutely incredible. Mike, you've got it all wrong, says Ralph. GB Energy stands for Gone Bust or Going Bust, and its offices are located deep in the granite, along with captured CO2. Keep up the great show. Yeah, we'll do our best. Thank you very much indeed. Let's talk now to Torrin Gavin, our favourite pharmacist and health expert, because a story doing the rounds today about online fat jabs, basically. Their sales will be tightened up, apparently, with video or face-to-face chats mandatory under new rules being put out there for the industry, because pharmacies have been selling some of these weight loss injections like Ozempic and Wegovy and Mounjaro, and they're now going to be treated as high-risk medicines. You're not going to be able to give them away to people who just want to lose a bit of weight for the summer bikini season. Torrin, a very good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, I'll tell you what, it's so cold here that there's no bikini season here. So I would say it. So what we're talking about here is there's going to be more strengthened up of the guidance which pharmacies have to adhere by when it comes to providing this medication. And if you think about when you get a medication, you get prescribed it by a prescriber, so that could be a doctor or a pharmacist or somebody who's eligible to do that, right. A regulated professional, and then that's provided by a pharmacy. And what we are seeing here is the General Pharmaceutical Council, who regulates pharmacies, saying that they're going to provide a better guidance. And I would say I'm very much happy about this, because about a year or two ago I was saying the guidance that they were providing was not clear enough, and so I'm glad that they've agreed with me, and they went to a consultation and they're now going to come out with some strengthened guidance, and what that's going to include is better clarity as to whose responsibility it is in the pharmacy, as to who's going to make sure advertising is done correctly. Right. They're also going to have things like this. So the MHRA, who regulate the product, you've got the ASA, who regulate advertising, and you've got the GPHC, who regulate the pharmacists and the pharmacy. They're going to be working together to provide some more clear guidance. So I think this is a positive step forward for patient safety.
Yes, but I mean, does that mean up until now people were kind of just turning up in chemists and pharmacies around the country asking for Wegovy and being given it?
So what that meant was there's been variation in how it's been being prescribed. So some people were using questionnaires to allow patients to access medications. Some people were doing video consultations. There was too much variation. So what this is going to result in is more clarity for patients as to what's expected from them. But also it means that those pharmacies and prescribers who've been doing really good work in trying to, get all those safeguards in place, that's going to be encouraged, greater clarity as to what's expected by everyone, so patients can start to experience the same experience if they're using different providers.
OK. So, I mean, presumably there is a craze at the moment, isn't there? I mean, I can tell, I think, and I don't know whether it's just me, but I can tell when people are using these weight loss jabs because they suddenly just lose a load of weight, you know, and it's pretty obvious that it's quite widespread at the moment as well, in every kind of walk of life. I know people in all sorts of businesses in London who are going, oh yeah, I managed to lose a load of weight. You go, really? How did you manage that? Very quickly, you know, and so there's an awful lot of this going on, isn't there?
Well, what I would say is most of these drugs are actually being prescribed privately, but I also think, Mike, there has been a lot of debate about these drugs because, number one, there's people who are going and trying to source them and, you know, look after themselves responsibly, who I do feel are being demonised for doing so. And then we've also got people going, well, we don't want the NHS to pay for it. So I think we need to have a bit of a reset on this. Make sure people are doing that diet and exercise, which you have to continue after taking these medications anyway. They are not a long-term solution. Right. And also, this is my warning to all of those influencers out there on TikTok, because I go on there and other platforms as well. You cannot advertise prescription-only medication to the general public. So I think there's going to be some people who really need to watch out how they're behaving on social media, because young people are also seeing these things. Even I, Mike, I spend a lot of time reading about these jabs and spending time looking at the guidance about them. Even I have been, you know, get targeted by so many adverts about them. Even I get frustrated. So I really, that people, these online platforms need to think about what's going on there as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. Torrin, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Torrin Goodwin, pharmacist and health expert there on the new rules which are going to apply to pharmacies and chemists. And basically, it sounds like they've been giving away these fat jabs willy-nilly to anyone that sort of shows up and says they want them. It's not really what was intended, is it? Got lots of really great messages coming in, so let's get to a few of those. This one from Jenny. It says, Mike, Guido's reporting that the voice coach's husband and Starmer founded the Death Penalty Project together in 2005, and that he remained a founder until 2020. The husband is still the chairman, and his company gave Keir a £5,000 donation, and his company paid Keir £18,000 for legal advice. Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit earlier on. One from Dan in Cardiff, who says, morning, Mike. I think the HQ of GB Energy should be perpetually floating around in a hot air balloon. At least they'll be practicing what they are preaching. It'd be like Phileas Fogg, you know, old Jurgen in a hot air balloon. That'd be great, wouldn't it? I wonder if his hair would blow around or whether it would just stick to his forehead like it does at the moment. This one from Sam. Morning, Mike. Sam in Barnsley, delivery driver for the local cafe. I just received a dinner order from GB Energy. 1 pasty, 1 pack of cheese and onion crisps and 1 can of pop. All the best. Jurgen doesn't eat much, does he? Here's one from Carl, who says, Boris paid the price for his party, etc. during lockdown, so Starmer may come back at PMQs regarding the Tories breaking the rules. They paid the price for that, and now so should Starmer. Well, we were talking earlier to Ryan Saby from The Sun, and he said, look, the thing is, you know, Kemi Bade might not want to go for the jugular with Starmer over voice coach gate, as we might as well call it, because he might come back at her and say, well, what about Rishi Sunak, who got a penalty fine? What about Boris Johnson, who was also given a fixed penalty notice? Well, yeah, but you have to be able to deal with that. Wendy in Clackmannanshire, great part of the world, says, what a great show you present each morning. Back in 2016, I had a great energy tariff with a company called GB Energy Supply. Yep, and guess what happened to them? They went bust. Why would Labour pick a name for this new company, the same name as a company that obviously did not do very well? Well, they probably didn't bother checking, did they? I mean, that is the problem with this Labour government. They don't seem to have a clue. When they decide to do something, they don't actually do any research whatsoever. Like the reason that they got themselves into shtuck about the inheritance tax on farmers, and they don't want to go back on it now, is because they didn't actually research it properly. They didn't realise how many farmers would be affected by it. Same goes for the pension fuel allowance, right? They didn't realise that they could have done it a different way, but by the time they'd announced it, it was too late to go back on it. They didn't realise, for example, that if they put VAT on private schools, that what would end up being the case would be that loads and loads of students from those private schools would then flood in to the state school system and make it even more difficult for those state schools to operate, with a pupil to teacher ratio going higher and higher and higher. That's the problem. They don't think, they don't know anything, and they've got no experience of government. And here we are, 8 months later, in the deep stuff. This is Talk.
vote with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time.
Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. The shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, Oivamo slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham. The sun is up. It's not looking quite so beautiful as it was yesterday. But listen, we should be thankful it's not raining. We are moving ever closer to spring. It is, of course, February the 4th, Tuesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. We'll be getting Prime Minister's questions then. Today, Keir Starmer is apparently meeting up with the Prime Minister of Denmark. Nobody knows quite sure what he's doing there, but, you know, no doubt it'll be something to do with, you know, fixing the foundations and or possibly maybe something to do with defence. But he was in Europe yesterday. Wasn't Denmark there? I don't know. Anyway, he's going to host his Danish counterpart for a working dinner in Downing Street on Tuesday evening. I wonder if there'll be any masks worn. This is Mette Frederiksen. They're expected to discuss European security as well as the issue of migration. I don't think we're getting too many migrants from Denmark, are we? I think most of them who go to Denmark get deported because they've actually got a pretty good scheme going there. And if somebody comes there illegally, they just get rid of them, send them back to North Africa, wherever the hell they came from. We've been talking about GB Energy a lot this morning. Jurgern Meyer is the name of the guy who's in charge of what appears to be a complete and utter shell company. Doesn't appear to be anybody working for it. Doesn't appear to be any offices. Doesn't appear to have a website. Here's what he has to say about how he's going to lower your electricity bills.
It will help bring energy prices down.
When?
Well, it's a matter for government and policy to decide.
But as the boss of this and as someone who is driving forward the ambition of the government, you surely have an idea in your head of when that central pledge to the people of reducing their bills by £300 will come into action.
It is not in the remit of Great British Energy to work out exactly how that energy costing gets through to the consumer.
What exactly is in the remit of GB Energy? They were set up to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. They were going to save us all from spending loads and loads of money on our own energy and buying it in from other places. It was all going to be about, you know, energy security, wasn't it? It was all going to be about creating our own energy sources here in the UK. But he doesn't know when, and he doesn't know how much, and he doesn't know if. He doesn't seem to know anything, old Jurgen, does he? Doesn't even know where the barber's shop is either. A very strange haircut. Not that that's an issue, of course. This one from James. He says, "Morning, Mike. Is there any chance Sue Gray could be asked to conduct a thorough, impartial inquiry into the voice coaching lessons? Regards, Jim." Yeah, she's not doing much at the moment. She's in the House of Lords, you know, just kind of kicking her heels, I imagine. Yeah, let's bring her in. Bring her back and do an investigation, a thorough investigation into Sir Keir Starmer's voice coach, who he said, of course, did not break the rules in any way, shape or form. And when he was asked yesterday in Brussels whether he broke any COVID rules, of course not, he went. Sounded like Kevin O'Sullivan when you ask him why he's wearing a weird shirt. It's 5 minutes past 9. This is Morning Glory. Loads more coming up. Phil says this, "Mike, I'm only listening this morning, so I cannot see the bloke from GB. Great BS energy." But he does sound like Ronnie Corbett. What a joke. Let's hope it's good night from him and a good night from Starmer. Absolutely right. Here we go. Apparently, says Lisa, when the Met Police were asked if they were investigating Starmer for the voice coach, they said only if they've received a complaint. Has anyone complained? I bet they have now. I bet somebody's complained, because why wouldn't you? The police need to investigate it, don't they? Let's talk to Richard Fuller, MP, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Richard, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to speak to you. I'm sorry to harp on about this voice coach, but to me, I'm not going to let this story go, because I think Keir Starmer's being, at the very least, disingenuous about the truth of what went on. I mean, who invites a voice coach in the middle of a Tier 4 lockdown to come to your place of work on Christmas Eve, travelling 50 miles from Brighton and back? It just doesn't seem right to me. There seems like there's something wrong with the story. He was very tetchy yesterday when he was asked about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mike, the public basically don't trust politicians, right? And they want politicians who tell the truth. And what we saw through the COVID period and subsequently with Dominic Cummings and the issues around Number 10 was the public really, really, really don't like people who set the rules and then break the rules. Right. And Sir Keir Starmer has been very strong with people about that, putting himself, you know, as sort of holier than thou about it. And it is hard to say, how is a voice coach a key worker? I mean, how on earth was that ever defined? Who made that definition? And, you know, Sir Keir Starmer really owes it, just as all the others have done in the past. When they've been found out, he's got to own up and say exactly what happened. And I think you're right to keep attention on this matter. I know it's in the past, but ultimately it gets to one of the reasons why so many people in this country are frustrated about the way the country's going. It's because they put people into office who say one thing and then do something else.
Right. And there's a sense that they kind of don't care about what the public thinks. There's a sense that they don't really give a monkeys, because, you know, they know best. You know, they trot out this old thing that, you know, we're not the Tories, you know, they're evil, nasty, horrible people. We're the good guys. You know, everything we do is whiter than white. Everything we do is justifiable because we occupy the moral high ground. And the public is sick to death of it. That's why Keir Starmer is one of the most unpopular prime ministers in the history of Britain.
Yeah. I mean, look, there is a sense, you know, on the left, I don't mean do party political, but that the left are sort of holier than thou, that they somehow think that they're righteous, that their principles are the right principles, and that for the rest of us who just want to go about leading our own lives, looking after our families, working hard, that somehow we're not fitting in with their plans for a better society. Well, mate, it's not my job to fit in with the plans of the left wing for what they think is a better society. The job of myself and everyone else is look after your family, follow the rules, work hard, and stand up for your country. And when they look at the current government, whether it's Sir Keir Starmer, he's a rubbish negotiator, or Rachel Reeves, she's clearly out of her depth, people get very frustrated about these things. And when it comes to a voice coach, not only do people not see the benefit, perhaps, of the voice coach, but also they say, well, what were the rules at the time?
Well, let's face it. I mean, he doesn't look like he's had a voice coach, does he? I mean, he doesn't sound like he's had a voice coach. I mean, you know, that's why I think people are beginning to question, you know, what exactly did the voice coach actually teach him, and how bad was he before they got there? But the bigger issue as well, Richard.
So why should he have a voice coach, right? Why should he have a voice coach?
Yeah.
Why do politicians think they need voice coach? What's wrong with their own voice?
Yeah.
Right. Just be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely right. And here's the thing. More important even than that is that they're kind of going back on all of their promises. You know, we've got a clip here, which, if you don't mind, I'd like to show you, which is what Keir Starmer said before this last election. And he said that they would freeze council tax and he wouldn't put it up. Have a look.
But we need to be clear about council tax. Labour would freeze council tax next year using that windfall tax that hasn't been collected. Yes, you heard it right. Not a penny more on your council tax, not a penny more than the bill you paid last year.
Yeah, well, that turns out to be a complete and utter lie. At the very least, a falsehood. How do they keep getting away with this? I mean, the stuff that they said they weren't going to do, they're doing. The stuff that they said they would do, they're not doing.
Yeah, I mean, it is an indication of how difficult Rachel Reeves' tax grabs have been on the state of the economy, the confidence of businesses, large and small, to invest, to hire more people, to raise potentially more taxes in the future. You know, that strategy from the budget seems to be falling into the gutter. Business confidence is going through the floor, and so you see this comparison. Says one thing last year, now forced to do something completely different, and you know, the problem for the Conservative Party was that people had felt in the election that they just wanted to get rid of the Conservative Party. We've got our own work to do, but I can understand people's frustration when they look at this government and say, you did promise something, you haven't delivered on it. In fact, you don't seem to be able to do anything properly at the moment at all.
No, we've been talking a lot this morning about GB Energy because their boss, Jurgern Meyer, gave a rather bizarre interview yesterday, his first interview since taking the job on. It seems to me that GB Energy is a sort of a figment of everybody's imagination. It doesn't really exist. It's like the Wizard of Oz is standing behind a curtain somewhere and telling us all that there's this great opportunity to create great British energy, but there's actually nobody behind the curtain, I'm afraid.
No, or behind the nameplate. I think they've got a little nice brass plate on the door where they've screwed that in. And behind that, we know that there's potentially £8 billion of your money, other taxpayers' money, waiting to invest in what? Well, we don't know. Right. The promise from Labour was that your energy bills would go down. Your energy bills have gone up. Right. And the government's already got enough renewables proposals from private investors to do 2 times the number of solar farms and wind farms to achieve their very rushed goals. So what the purpose of this new little quango is to take public money, take taxpayers' money, I'm not sure, and I think you're right to be sceptical about that and to ask those tough questions of the new chairman and CEO.
Yeah, absolutely right. And what do you think is going to happen at PMQs tomorrow? Is Kemi Babe not going to go after Keir Starmer on the voice coach front? I mean, some people are saying, oh, she won't do that because she's worried he'll come back with what about Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson and all that. I mean, I think she should, to be honest.
Above my pay grade, Mike.
I'm not having that. Richard,
Don't know about those things.
Thank you very much indeed. Richard Fuller.
Mike, can I just say one more thing?
Go on.
One more thing, if I may. Can I just say one thing, Mike?
Sure.
So, because I promised myself during COVID, I listened to you on the radio during COVID.
Yeah.
And you were a really strong voice, and you helped me through that period. And I promised myself then that when I got the chance to be interviewed by you, and this is the first time you've interviewed me, I just wanted to say thank you for what you did during that period. And
That's very kind.
Thanks.
That's very kind. Richard, listen, good to talk to you. We must do it more then. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Richard Fuller MP, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. You know, very wise man, obviously. Wise words. It's very nice, isn't it, when you occasionally get complimented like that? How about this for a load of great messages coming through? Susan says this, Mike, love your show. Sue from Essex here. Perhaps Kemi should start Prime Minister's questions with, the rain in Spain stays mainly on the plain. Maybe she should. How about this one from Simon in Aberdeen? GB Energy creating 200 to 300 jobs. What about the thousands of jobs being lost through the inept government policy of not issuing new licences and using our own oil and gas? Well, absolutely right. And Sarah says, Mike, if Starmer resorts to whataboutery at PMQs this week, it will prove his guilt. Beergate during the local elections had its own specific guidance, which provided meetings indoors, including work. We all know this was a fudge, much in the same way as Starmer will try to weasel his way out of breaking the law. It's sickening, says Sarah in West Sussex. Let's talk to Graham, who's a new caller in Doncaster. Graham, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike. How you doing, mate?
Very well, sir.
Listen, firstly, can we stop referring to this individual as a man? If he's a man, I don't want to be. Simple as, Mike.
You're talking about Keir Starmer?
Yeah, well, yes, that.
Well, he doesn't know what a woman is, and maybe there's every chance he doesn't know what a man is either.
He's mate, I'm dumbfounded with him. I'm dumbfounded. And regarding this, with this breaching COVID rules, we know what that individual would have done, mate.
Yeah.
He would have. Well, I'm sorry, he has broke the rules.
Yes.
He has broke the rules. He wants investigating by the police, and he needs charging. Same as Boris.
Well, I mean, you don't have to give him, you don't have to lock him up and clap him in irons, but you can give him a fixed penalty notice, couldn't you?
Of course, but then he said he'll resign.
Well, then he has to resign if he gets a fixed penalty notice. That's what you said he would do. But of course he won't.
He'll bend the laws. He'll bend the laws.
Yeah, of course he will.
That's what he does.
I know.
He's an individual who'll bend the laws. I've had problems with my local MP because I sent her a message that she didn't like. I didn't make no threats, no nothing. I made a statement to her regarding the voting on the investigation of the kids raping.
Yeah.
She did not like it. I had 4 policemen banging at my door.
Did you? See, we've had other people say that. We've had other people say that.
I was arrested, mate, and took to the police station. Now, let me say, Mike, the police were brilliant. I can't knock them.
Okay.
They were fantastic with me.
Right.
But that's not the point. Who does he think he is?
I know.
Causing unrest everywhere. I'm 63 years old.
Yeah. Shocking. Shocking, man.
He's no interest, mate. He's got to go. We've got
to get rid of him. Graham, you're absolutely right. We're trying our hardest. We're hoping he's going to get rid of himself soon. Graham, thank you very much. Great call. By the way, just in case anybody's wondering why we never have anybody on from the government, we repeatedly ask people from the government to come on and defend their position. We repeatedly ask them to send ministers our way when they do their rounds. But, you know, as you will see, and Julie Hartley-Brewer used to have this problem with the Tories, actually, they don't want to come on and talk to me because you know why? Because they don't want the idea that they don't know what I'm going to ask them. And they don't want me to pin them out. They don't want me to humiliate them because they know that that's exactly what would happen. I mean, what do you think would happen if Keir Starmer came on this show now, right now, and I started quizzing him about the voice coach? So, Sir Keir, who's the voice coach and how long have you known her? You know, why have you given her a valedictorial kind of recommendation on her website? Thanks for all your help. I couldn't have done it without you. Done what? What's all that about? And when was the last time you spent Friday night at home that you said you all spent at home 6 o'clock every night, work with the family? You know, what's going on inside your head? All of those questions. You wouldn't want to answer them. Let's get a voice note from Simon on GB Energy.
Good morning, Mike. It's Simon from sunny Devon. Oh, that Jurgern guy, you can always tell when somebody doesn't know what they're on about or whether they're lying because they get tetchy when asked a question, don't they? Can you remember Reginald Perrin in the day?
Yeah.
When he used to go out the door to go to his fictitious job and he just used to have a little briefcase with his apple and orange and a cheese sandwich in it. Yeah, that's our Jurgern. See you, mate.
It's
Great
true.
programme. Cheers.
It's true, isn't it? You imagine Mrs. Jurgern, you know, auf Wiedersehen, Jurgen. See you later. Where are you going today? I'm going to the office. Are you? Where is it? I cannot tell you. It is a secret. Come and have lunch with. No, I have very many lunches lined up. No. Then I have to go for meetings. Who with? I can't tell you. Here we go. Rate council tax increases, says Polly. I guess us taxpayers now have to absorb the council tax for those that don't pay council tax. If the law-abiding tax-paying British people weren't angry when Labour got in, they should be now. Labour are toast. Keep it up. One from Rob, who says, morning, Mike. Been in tears most of the morning show so far. My chuckle muscles are killing me. Anyway, is it right what I heard that Ed Milliwatt has been employed by the Great British Energy Company to sing a medley of energising songs? And it's official opening. Your money, folks, is blowing in the wind. Yes, your money is blowing in the wind. I wouldn't be surprised with his ukulele in front of a wind socket or something. 19 minutes past 9. What are we doing next? No idea. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk to Ellis Tustin, founder of Names Not Numbers campaign. We're going to find out exactly what really happens during COVID, because this guy has got a story that will not make you very happy at all, because he is talking for people who lost their lives as a result of government decisions during the COVID pandemic. And I don't think he'll find it very funny that Keir Starmer doesn't want to answer any questions about it. So we'll find out what's coming up on that next.
Government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high, and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear? Will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this Parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence, and she has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 23 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here just before 10 to tell us what's coming up on her show. We're going to now talk to Ellis Tustin. He's the founder of the Names Not Numbers campaign, an organisation which aims to remember and campaign for those who lost their lives as a result of the government decisions during the COVID-19 crisis. He lost his own grandfather, of course, as well as many people did. And of course, one of the reasons why this whole story about Keir Starmer and the voice coach is a thing is not because of the fact that we expect politicians to behave in a different way than ordinary people, not because we expect politicians to be held to a higher standard, but just because we expect them to be held to the same standard and to do the things that they say everybody else should do. And we have at the moment, I think, a bit of a paucity of the truth around this story. Yesterday, Jack Elson from The Sun was able to approach Keir Starmer when he was at a press conference in Brussels to ask him if all of the rules were followed. Have a look.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Of course not.
Was your voice coach definitely a key worker?
Very textually denying that anything was done which was inappropriate. Ellis, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, very well indeed. I mean, some people are saying, you know, this is all very long ago and it's not very important and we don't need to be, you know, going after him the same way that everybody went after Boris Johnson. I disagree. I think he was very clear at the time about what he thought people should be doing. He talks a lot about sticking to the rules. I mean, what are you making of this particular situation?
Well, I mean, at the moment, it's an allegation. He's denied it. Evidence-wise, we don't really know what's there. Unlike the Conservative parties, where there was a lot of footage and Jacob Rees-Mogg making open jokes about it, we don't know it yet. So,
well, we've got a picture. We've got a picture of her in the Labour headquarters on Christmas Eve. We've got her. We've got her photograph of travelling on a train from Brighton on Christmas Eve. So we know that she was there. The question is what she was doing there and why she felt that that was an okay thing to do, isn't it?
Well, it's her job. She wanted to make some money during COVID. If this happened, if they didn't follow the rules, then yeah, I agree that, you know, some kind of apology should be made. But let's not forget how bad it was under the Conservatives. I think everyone is being too quick to try and make Keir Starmer to be a monster that he's not yet proven to be.
I don't think anyone's calling him a monster. It's just that he said, you know, that if he has broken any rules under COVID at the time when the Conservatives were being fined and being given notices, shall we say, penalty notices, and being fined, and in the end Boris lost his job over it, then surely he should be held to the same. Surely he should be held to the same standard, shouldn't he?
I think he lost his job over thousands of people dying due to him and his cabinet's ridiculous decisions on how to protect the country against COVID. And I think the fact that
I disagree. I think part of it surely was the hypocrisy, wasn't it? Asking people to do things which he wasn't doing. And if Keir Starmer's guilty of the same thing, then surely at the least he should get a penalty charge notice, shouldn't he?
I think if she was considered a key worker was a huge spectrum at the time. My partner at the time worked for the news, and he could go into the news, as I imagine people in your profession that you know did. You could come into the office. Yeah, because we were delivering
information to people. That was why we were key workers. But a voice coach is not a key worker. And previous to that particular occasion, when she went in to see him, she'd done most of it on Zoom.
I mean, at what point during the restrictions? I'm not particularly on here to defend him, but at the same time, I think that this whole country's attitude to bash Keir Starmer so quickly after he's taken office I think it's a bit ridiculous. The Tories left 14 years.
It's not about bashing him. It's about a book that's come out that has some facts in the book, and so that's what we do: is we look into those facts and we ask for an explanation. And so far, there has been no explanation forthcoming. Keir Starmer's done what he normally does, which is just to dismiss it out of hand.
Well, so in terms of Keir Starmer's dismissal of it, do you really think that? Do you think what's the evidence to say that the rules may or may not have been broken?
Well, the evidence is that under Tier 4 restrictions, there was no mingling of households at all, right? Unless there was specific circumstances for it to happen. And a voice coach who mostly did her work on Zoom with the Prime Minister, or sorry, the leader of the opposition as he was then, it doesn't seem very clear why suddenly on Christmas Eve she had to travel to Downing Street. It would appear to be in breach of the rules, and it hasn't been explained properly to us or to anybody else because Keir Starmer hasn't done it. It's a simple question, you know. He said, of course, the rules have not been broken. Well, I'm sorry, that's not really good enough.
Yeah, I just think this country's got a bit of amnesia at the moment. Are we forgetting the kind of parties that happened whilst people were being buried in the ground?
No,
in the Conservative
I don't
policy?
think so. Because all of those parties were written about, talked about. People lost their jobs over them. You know, I don't think anyone's forgotten about that. But I think we've also moved on from that. We now have a Prime Minister who talks about being very much driven by the rules and not breaking those rules. And if he's a hypocrite, I think we need to know, don't we?
Well, I'll be honest. I think people are clawing. It's quite a boring reason to break lockdown. It's not like he had a barbecue. It's not like he hosted a big party. It's not like.
Well, you don't know if there was a party. There might have well been a party. A lot of people have suggested that a voice coach doesn't travel 50 miles on a round trip, which normally was done on Zoom, unless there's a reason to be there. Well, you know, there must be another reason. Surely he must have some curiosity about it. No.
But.
There's nobody
honestly,
on the train. Look, that's the train she travelled on. There's nobody else travelling.
Yeah. But again, like, has anyone looked into her reasons for bringing this out? She must have been paid pretty well to go and travel there to break rules.
Well, she's obviously been told not to say anything because she's been asked to comment on it and she hasn't so far.
Oh, I see. Well, you know, an actress making allegations is not exactly the same as the likes of Matt Hancock groping his secretary, in my opinion.
Okay.
Sorry.
You seem to be a bit stuck in the past, Ellis. I mean, we've got a new government now.
Do you know what?
Matt Hancock lost his job. Boris Johnson lost his job. Why are you still going over it?
It's not a case of being stuck in the past. Actually, my attitude is very forward-thinking. COVID was a pretty miserable time, right? My campaign group, after my grandfather died, we went to hold the government to account. We would take the names of people who died down to Parliament. I'd stand there with a megaphone. We had them printed out. People of the cabinet had to go past us and see what they'd done, right? My life since, you know, that time was very harmful. Not to overshare, but it led me into a lot of drinking, a lot of problems like that I've soon overcome. So I don't tend to get angry or annoyed in the same way that I would have done back then.
Okay.
Back then I'd have been
I understand that, but you still seem to be very angry and annoyed about the people from back then, whereas you're not angry about people from the Labour Party
there's
back
really
then.
Been no justice for it. I mean, if you look at how Matt Hancock treated care homes and how he gave away PPE at the beginning and how they, you know, there's actual evidence to say that they actually made money in shares of PPE during this time. If you look at things like that, considering they were then allowed to go on I'm a Celebrity and Boris Johnson has been allowed to release a book that is at the front row of foils, then yeah, I think the fact they're profitising from what a dreadful job they did is pretty disgusting. Keir Starmer, let's be blunt, right, is a bit dull, right?
Well, he is a bit dull, but he's also profited.
No, that's not a bad thing.
But he's profited, has he not, from their mistakes as well? Because now he's Prime Minister, and he'll probably write a book, and he'll probably make a lot of money, and he'll be in a position to get free suits from Lord Alley and free spectacles. But you can't turn your back on that and just say they're all suddenly different. They're not different. They're all the same, right? I'm not giving a pass to Boris Johnson or Matt Hancock, but Keir Starmer appears to be just as much of a snout in the trough as all the rest of them. So I don't understand why you don't see that.
He's got a bigger mess to clean up. It's a huge mess to clean up.
He's made a bigger mess since he got in.
Yeah, because the Conservatives left the mess for him.
Well, you can go on about that if you want, but it sounds to me like you hate the Conservatives and you love the Labour Party. So, you know, you're not really being fair.
No, I tell you what. I'm about common sense.
So am I. This is the world headquarters of common sense, and I think you have to see what's in front of you.
Before COVID, I was a Conservative Party member. Right, I was a member of the Conservative Party before COVID. During COVID, I decided to step away from it. I'm not a member of the Labour Party. I don't consider myself right-wing or left-wing, but common sense, okay?
Yeah, and that's what we are here.
Well,
but we see anybody with common sense sees politicians for what they are. You don't give them a pass. You don't give them any leeway. You don't treat them any differently because they're from one party or another.
I'll tell you what,
I treat them all the same.
I'm not giving him a pass.
Sounds like it.
But it does not require the same response of anger as it would have done 4 years ago.
I'm not asking you to be angry. I'm not asking you to be angry. I'm just saying, don't you think that he should come clean about what it was all about and why he had to have a voice coach on Christmas Eve in 2020 in Tier 4 lockdown, which was the hardest part of lockdown ever, where nobody was allowed to go anywhere, where some people couldn't see their parents at Christmas, some people couldn't see their children, some people couldn't see their relatives, right? All of that. And yet he's inviting his voice coach to come from Brighton on a round trip to London to see him. I just don't think it's right.
Well, I think that obviously he should address it, and
exactly.
No, and no, it's not something that it's not something that I'm sure he's very proud of if he did break the rules. But if it was a work meeting and it was done at a distance properly,
no, you couldn't have them. I mean, I was talking to Harry Cole from the Sun yesterday. On that very same day, there was a press conference in Downing Street. They weren't allowed to go to it. They couldn't go to a press conference in Downing Street because of the lockdown in Tier 4. People weren't going anywhere. Everything was being done on Zoom. So, I mean, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just surprised you don't just accept that it's the same thing.
No, I just think that perspective is actually quite a decent thing here. I mean, the truth is, like I said with Keir, that, you know, he's not going to create as an exciting a news story or a scandal as Boris Johnson or Matt Hancock did. So I find the idea of this being, you know, in a similar light to what they did is so far and in between. It's a huge gap. I agree that he should address it, he should apologise for it, and he should admit it. But if it did happen,
in his words, if he broke the rules, he will resign. That's what he said. That's what he said he would do. So that's why it's important.
I don't think there's any call for him to resign, personally.
Okay.
And that'll surprise you because of
not really, not after everything else you've said. Doesn't surprise me at all.
But I think perspective is a beautiful thing, and I think that we're forgetting how bad it was under COVID under the Conservatives.
It wasn't under the Conservatives. It was bad because there was a lockdown, which Keir Starmer would have made actually worse because he kept asking for more lockdowns, further lockdowns, and you know, who knows how much more damaging they would have been.
Well, I mean, if we wouldn't have had more lockdowns, it would have been interesting to see how much more of the population would have sadly died.
Well, you know, the death rates around the world were pretty much the same, actually. But Ellis, listen, thanks for talking to us. Appreciate your time. Ellis Tustin, founder of the Names Not Numbers campaign, says he's not a member of the Labour Party, but he might as well join them, it seems to me. Thanks anyway. Let's get a call from David in Gloucestershire. David.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning, sir. Very well indeed. What can I do for you?
Very well. Well, me and my wife were just talking, and we think that Mr. Starmer must have been listening to a lorry outside when he was having his voice coach because his language was
Yes, quite.
But on a more serious note,
yes.
My mum always said that liars will always get caught out by their lies. You have to remember what you said to whom and when.
It's very difficult, isn't it?
What will always bring them down. So that was my point that I really ran into.
You're absolutely right, David. Thank you very much indeed for that. Because it's true. If you tell a lot of lies, it's a lot more difficult to keep up with them because you have to remember what you said the first time around. And that is why Keir Starmer gets so annoyed, like all compulsive liars, when he gets asked a question about what he said and what he did. Brad in Cambridge says, morning, Mike. I think it's absolutely disgusting that senior Labour politicians repeatedly avoid appearing on talkTV. They are supposed to be the government for all people, not just their supporters. Absolutely right. And Will says, I think Kemi would be very unwise to batter Keir about this voice coach thing. Let Keir build his own grave and don't give him the excuse to fire straight back. Be more intelligent and don't look like a child in the playground. Interesting. And Tracy in Bromley says, on PMQs, if Kemi questions Harmer on voice coach in COVID and he hits back about Boris's behaviour, it will be an easy answer for Kemi in return just by saying he was fined and forced to resign. Very true. That's the point. It's all about equivalency here, isn't it? That's my point. I don't care about party politics. I really don't. And if you listen to this show for long enough, you'll know that I gave the Tories just as hard of a time as I give to this mob. For this mob, though, are actually worse because they're ridiculously, laughably useless. And that's why we keep falling about laughing at them. Coming up, we're going to talk to Dame Andrea Jenkins, Reform UK mayoral candidate, of course, and Reform leading in the polls for the first time properly in a YouGov poll. Not just running neck and neck with Labour, not just second to Labour, but actually first. We'll find out why next.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:40. I'm Mike Graham. It's from Tracy in Bromley. Sorry, no, I think we've already done that one. Steve, I should do instead. Badenoch's first question this time should be, could the Prime Minister tell us at what point did he discover that voice coaches had been designated as key workers during the COVID lockdown restrictions? Well, I think that would be a good place to start. And what does Starmer's wife think about him meeting a voice coach on Christmas Eve, says G. Well, maybe she was there. I don't know. It's all so difficult to get to the bottom of, and the fact is that Keir Starmer just won't answer any questions. He gets very tetchy yesterday, of course not, when he was asked, did you break any COVID rules? And these things are important, not least because of the way that he chased and harassed and harangued any Tory who he thought he could get to resign or to get put out of their job. Let's talk to Dame Andrea Jenkins. I'm sure she'll remember back to those dark days. She's now with Reform, UK mayoral candidate, of course. Andrea, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Thank you very much indeed. I mean, there are some people who keep saying to me, this is not a big story, this is not a big deal, Keir Starmer is nowhere near as bad as the Tories were. But I disagree. This is a guy who spends his entire time telling us all how he's a stickler for the rules. He doesn't break rules. Everything's within the rules that he does. He got away with the thing in Durham, the beer and curry night, by saying it was a work thing. There is absolutely no way in the world that I can see why a voice coach can travel all the way from Brighton on an empty train all the way up to Labour Party headquarters for a lesson in voice coaching on Christmas Eve. I mean, the irony of him being, treated by somebody or taught by somebody who's a voice coach is ridiculous anyway, because he can't speak for toffee. But, what do you make of it?
Look, I think, like you and like the British public, we like fairness and we don't like rank hypocrisy, Mike.
Yes.
And I remember that time very well. My elderly mum, we didn't see her. Clifford didn't see his dad for those 3 months periods, and he was only, about 5 years old at that time. And a vocal coach does not need to be there. Look, I used to be a vocal coach and a singing teacher, Mike.
Yeah.
They could do exercises via Zoom. She can share information via Zoom. She can record him and play it back to him. And it's just a hypocrisy that gets me every time with the Labour Party. He really is two-tier Keir at every opportunity, isn't he?
Well, he's now four-tier Keir, isn't he? Because this was tier 4, to be honest.
Yeah, yes. That's so right. And it's wrong. And I mean, it's no wonder Labour's started being behind in the polls, because you cannot do as I say, not as I do, can you?
Well, exactly right. And because he is so much of a stickler as he claims, and because he actually said, it's really sanctimonious. We've got him on record as saying, if I was found to have been in breach of COVID rules and I was given a penalty notice, I would resign. So presumably he should stick to that. And yesterday, when he was asked by Jack Elson from The Sun, did you break any COVID rules? He was very tetchy, as he always is, and suddenly started shouting down and absolutely not, no, don't be stupid. It was almost as though he was insulted by the question itself. That's not good enough, I'm afraid.
I think the public are waking up to the fact that Labour are liars. I think it's as simple as that, actually.
Well, exactly. I mean, the other big story we've got in the paper this morning, council tax going up in some parts of the country by 10%, other parts of the country by 5% at least. We've got another clip of him from last year saying council taxes will be frozen under Labour. You will not pay a penny more, which is clearly rubbish.
Absolutely. And just as the waspy women as well, pensioners, they all know that when he opens his mouth, it's lies that's coming out.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's talk about Reform's figures, because amazing news on the latest poll. I should say congratulations are in order. Reform UK, 25% of the vote. Joint highest score today, up from 23%. Labour on 24%, down 3. Lib Dems unchanged on 14. Tories on 21%, down 1. I mean, there's only one game in town at the moment, isn't there?
Yes, and I think what it is, look, the Conservatives, which I was part of, wasn't I? And I resigned, as you know, in November, joined Reform.
Yeah.
They have let the public down, and that's why Kem is trailing behind in the polls, and we're ahead. And so is the Labour Party. And I think that the general public are just sick of the two main parties because they don't believe them. And I just think that both the main parties just do not listen to the public, and they do not learn the lessons. And it's only Reform that really are speaking out for the British public and are determined to have, as you know, your previous guest said about needing common sense. Well, I think only Reform's got common sense at the moment.
Well, also Reform came up top in a conversation about law and order, because the Policy Exchange report that's come out today, which says that more and more people actually would like to see the police doing more about cracking down on crime. In that particular survey, Reform also comes out on top in terms of, you know, who people think would deal with law and order best.
Yes, I mean, with this mayoral role, actually, Mike, in a couple of years' time, you know, if I'm elected, I should hopefully get the Police and Crime Commissioner powers within the mayoralship. And I want to see, you know, just not running after people for these so-called hate crimes, but actually catching real criminals. And I mean, burglaries don't get attended, do they, by the police? No. And it's just as bad under the Conservative government, wasn't it? But also, I mean, look, I'm sick of all this diversity and inclusion stuff. I mean, I saw a letter yesterday with West Yorkshire Police on what they spend on that and what all local authorities do. And I think we need to root out that. We need to do like what Rudy Giuliani did when he was mayor in the US. And where even the smallest crime does not go unpunished. Otherwise, people progress to more serious crimes. And I think that only Reform have actually got the guts and gumption to do that, because that's certainly what I would do if you know, if I'm in power as the mayor and get these powers. I mean, a piece in the Mail today, which is written under a pseudonym, so I'm not sure who it actually is. He said, I've had 2 iPhones, an iPad and a Rolex stolen in 4 London muggings in just 1 year. The police's response was, you're lucky you haven't been stabbed. You know, and
great.
Just, you know, how the heck does the Mayor of London keep getting elected as well, Mike? That's beyond me.
That is beyond, I think, most people's ken. We can't quite figure it out. One serious question, though, for Reform. I get asked this a lot by people when we talk about Reform and the future. There's a big gap between, you know, being as popular as the party is now and transforming into a load of seats. Finding the right candidates and getting the mechanism of the structure, I suppose, of the party right. Are you happy with the way that's all going, and are you happy with the way that the structure and the selection of candidates is going?
Yes, I mean, it's actually amazing, and the more strident than the Conservative Party. Every candidate gets vetted, myself included was vetted. They look at all the social media profiles, and so they literally have got directors at every level in every region, where it's professionalized now since Zia's you know, being party chairman. And no, it's a professional outfit, and I'm very proud of what they're doing. And the only way is up, Mike. I really feel that. I feel it on the ground, and I feel it with the energy in the party as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it all goes. We wish you luck. Great to see you, Dame Andrea Jenkins. Thank you very much indeed. Reform UK's mayoral candidate, of course. Let's get a quick voice note from Nicola on our last guest, Ellis Tustin.
Morning, it's Nicola from Ashford. Can't believe this conversation that's going on about this voice coach. I know very well what the rules were, because I was in Tier 4 in London and my family were in West Sussex, and we had to cancel our Christmas either 2 or 3 days before when they put that announcement out. I just can't believe this guy that you've got on at the minute trying to deflect everything. You know, those were the rules and they were clearly broken, for goodness sake.
Absolutely right, Nicola. Thank you very much indeed. And many of you have got things to say about Ellis. Alan in Liverpool says, Ellis Tustin, while his cause is credible, just comes across as a leftist apologist. Edward says, I spent a year separated from my wife because of COVID. Keir thought a voice coach in the depths of COVID was acceptable. It's disgusting. Chris from Ipswich, Ellis says he campaigned against the government for breaking the rules, but if Keir does it, oh well, it was for a boring reason, so it's okay. I mean, it doesn't make much sense, does it? I have to say, John, maybe it needs investigating for a voice coach to travel 50 miles. Well, you know, it's kind of ironic that she takes a picture on the train on her way to see Keir Starmer when there's nobody else on the train. There's a reason why there's nobody else on the train, because nobody else was travelling, because nobody else was allowed to travel. You weren't supposed to. Now, as you heard from Richard Fuller, the MP, I was very strong on the COVID restrictions and how ridiculous they all were. But back then, there were very, very serious punishments for anybody who broke the rules. Some people may have broken the rules and got away with it. You may have been discreet about how you did that, and I wouldn't possibly comment on whether I did it. But certainly at the end of the day, somebody like Keir Starmer, who says he's a stickler for the rules and who would never break the rules and would always work within the rules, if he's broken the rules, which it certainly appears to have done, then surely he has to resign, doesn't he? Simple as that. 10 minutes to 10.
full-length runway in Britain was built in the 1940s. No progress in 80 years. A third runway could increase potential GDP by 0.43% by 2050.
Could a new runway be built that abides with carbon targets, concerns around noise pollution and concerns around air pollution?
That a third runway at Heathrow would unlock further growth, boost investment, increase exports and make the UK more open and more connected.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory at 9:54. Very nearly the end of the show. We'll be talking to Jeremy, not Jeremy. He's on this afternoon at 4. Jeremy Carl with Drive. Julie Hartley-Brewer, of course, will be here in a few moments' time to tell us what's coming up on her show. But first, let's go to the phones. Kerry is in Hertfordshire. She wants to talk about the Keir Starmer voice coach scenario. Kerry, a very good morning to you.
Hi.
Hi. Tell us what you want to tell us.
Yeah, that Christmas, we were in T4 lockdown.
Yeah.
My dad, unfortunately, died at home alone because we weren't allowed out. We didn't know until the evening.
Right.
He was left laying on his kitchen floor all day. And then his funeral, we were only allowed a handful, I think it was less than 10 people to his funeral because of T4 lockdown.
Yeah.
So the fact that Keir Starmer has done that, I'm fuming.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly
fuming.
right. Because it's one thing to say, well, not everybody could keep to the rules or something like that. But he's been so vociferous about telling everyone what rules they had to stick to, and he's so sure that he did. I can't see any excuse for why this woman needed to go to see him. I just can't.
He's a hypocrite. He's an absolute hypocrite, and he's a liar, and he shouldn't have power.
Do you think I mean, he said that if he was ever found to have broken the rules and he was given a penalty notice, he would resign. I mean, I think this is the territory we're in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, he should. Although who they would put in place of him is just as terrifying, as far as I can see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, but listen, Kerry, I appreciate your call. It must have been horrible to lose your father in those circumstances, so thank you for telling us about that and sharing it. It's absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? It's ridiculous. That there are, you know, this story has still got some way to go, it seems to me. You know, Keir Starmer thinks he's got away from the Sun question from Jack Elsom. But, you know, I just can't, I fail to see how there is any substance to an excuse that says that during this period, this Tier 4, 2020 December, if you remember what it was like, you know, in no way, shape or form could you justify having somebody come to visit you in your office. You just couldn't do it. We wouldn't have been doing it here. I mean, throughout the whole of COVID, I was doing shows from this room where I'm sitting now. I came in every single day to do the mid-morning show. Not everybody did, because that was their choice. Some people worked from home. Julia came in when she could. Sometimes she was ill and she was off, but she still did her show from home. I was at times the only person in here doing shows from here. I came in every day, but I couldn't bring people with me. We had a very strict protocol about who came in and who didn't. Simple as that. This man has more tears than a wedding cake, says Lynn in Australia. And Tim in Southampton says, the voice coach also broke the lockdown laws and we have the photographic evidence. The police should at least investigate her. But I'm sure they will now be doing that because somebody will have asked the question. Mike, I wish I'd said I was my nan's voice coach when she was dying in hospital. Unfortunately, I was just her grandson. And this one from Ernie. Mike, what was so important for the actress and the Prime Minister to put their lives and possibly others at risk for them to get together on Christmas Eve? You know, people are still concerned about it, you know, and it's not going away. I think that just because old Keir Starmer wants to glad hand his way around Europe and invite the Danish Prime Minister in for dinner tonight, I wonder if he'll be wearing a mask. Who knows? We shall see. Julie Hartley-Brewer's here. Very good morning.
Good morning. I've got this idea that Keir Starmer actually does wear a mask when other
all
people
the time.
He's just one of those people. Everyone else does the other way around.
Do you know when you see people every now and again wearing them and you think...
I was wrong on this because yesterday we were discussing this time and I just, you know, there were lots of exemptions. There were lots of exemptions, and if it was work related and blah blah blah. But no, this is looking very questionable. This woman did all of her other work on Zoom, and I mean that message from one of our listeners pointing out that, you know, he wasn't allowed to see his grandmother. People are pretty angry about it, you know. It's amazing. People say, "Oh, it's long in the past." It's not that long ago.
It's really not.
I'm sorry, it's not that long ago.
And also, it is compounded by the fact that he made himself out to be, you know, the king of the rules, and nobody breaks rules around here. And when he was answering that question to Jack Elsom, you can see how angry he is because, you know,
he doesn't like ever being questioned.
Doesn't like ever being questioned.
No,
and so,
which is very telling.
And I just think he's, you know, he's not out of the woods on this.
I'm sure there was some technicality. It's like they kind of got off with the curry and the beers.
Yeah.
They kind of got off on this sort of technicality, and
this sounds like, you know, he's invited her. This sounds like he's invited her for a drink, doesn't it?
I mean, it just,
you know, and maybe
the
a
fact
few
that
other
he knows
people.
her husband as well,
and has been paid 18 grand.
The main thing is, pretty much, to a man and a woman, the people who impose the rules and wag their fingers at us. By the way, including the likes of, you know, Sky News's Kay Burley and others, all the journalists who were pushing this stuff, sitting in the press conference and taking it off.